The UPSC CSE arena is an ever-evolving space where staying up to date becomes as crucial as maintaining a thorough preparation. With strategic planning and holistic coverage for exam syllabus, Vision IS Delhi presents GS Foundation course, avail analysis and integration of current affairs with GS syllabus. All India test series with an innovative assessment system, inculcating post-test analysis, discussion, all India ranking, and more. Explore the holistic learning modules intrinsically designed for the ideal aspirant.
Good evening. Any doubts you have from the previous session? We've covered 3-4 topics. What did you learn? What exactly is the nature of questions? We discussed, I think, 4 topics. One was national income accounting. What type of questions were asked from national income accounting? What was the learning? So answers definitely would come later, but what was the learning? What were the type of questions? Whether it was GDP, talking about growth or development, they just asked the meaning of all of these terms. There was no technicality involved. The question was growth versus development, if this is happening, or GDP. All of those questions are just asking the meaning of the term. The second type of questions was classification of various sectors of the economy. What type of activity is what? Primary, secondary, working capital, fixed capital. So any term which is related to output production or is related to the various sectors. If you see the classification here is 2 types of activities, production and consumption over the entire economy. They're just asking the meaning of the terms. So roughly 7 to 8 questions, whatever were discussed, were on these 2 parameters only: production, consumption, the meaning of the terms of this, and also the sectoral classification. All of this, how this can be prepared, you have the class 12th NCERT macroeconomics. So once you understand this, all of those terms, what is real GDP, what is nominal GDP, what is the trend in real GDP, nominal GDP, that can be done from the newspaper. So revision, the newspaper will help, but the basics will be done in the class 12th macroeconomics, the first chapter, that is national income accounting. If you understand all of the terms, you'll be able to solve those questions. Then what was the second topic we discussed? Yes, money and banking. Money or monetary policy. What were the type of questions here? So this is what you have to know. Then only you can read a topic. Because if you start reading a topic, you need to know what direction you are going in. In scope of the question से ही समझ आएगा कितना पढ़ना है. Money monetary policy. Question was mostly on forms of money, what is legal tender, bitcoins, the central bank digital currency, different types of money, mostly which were in news, or also the basic part of it. Then what else? Concepts related to money supply or money multiplier. How does money function in the economy? What is the role of the bank? Who controls the money supply? So there were functions of RBI related to the monetary policy. This is what the three types of questions that came from money, and this is a regular exercise. Every year, maximum number of questions come from money and the external sector combined. So different forms of money, dynamics of money supply, money multiplier, and any move done by the RBI or what exactly RBI does in the economy with respect to the monetary policy. There have been easy questions also. Out of the four, which of the following are parts of monetary policy? Then there have been certain technical questions on money multiplier. If 1 lakh rupees is withdrawn, what exactly happens to money supply? All those type of questions covering the various dynamics of money. Components of monetary policy, who does monetary policy, all of those included here. Then another topic discussed was banking. What was the type of questions in banks? First, the functioning of a bank. What does a bank do? What exactly is the asset liability structure of a bank? So basics of banking have also been covered, as in 2022-23 the question was on what of the following are not the assets of a commercial bank. So very basic functioning of a bank. What does a bank do? The function of money multiplier is bank itself. Then banking gets specific to India. We have different types of bank in the country. The question was on payment banks, question is on small finance bank, question was also on urban cooperative banks. Different types of development, but if you know the different types of banks, wo development covered nahi bhi hai, you will be able to solve that question. Then the third type of question was on banking regulations. That if foreign banks operate in India, do they have a minimum capital requirement or not? What are the 50% or what 50% should be Indians in a subsidiary of a foreign bank? All types of regulations, whether it is on management regulations, also if it is regulations on or capital structure of the bank. These are the three major stock questions which are covered every year with respect to banking. The fourth type of questions which they ask is any recent development in banking. And we discussed how from 2015 to 20, what was the recent development? NPA problem. NPA ke around whatever dimensions could have been covered, they covered all such dimensions with respect to banking. This part of banking is mostly correlated to money and money multiplier, which you will find in class 12th NCERT macroeconomics. The second chapter after national income accounting, it explains the various forms of money. It talks about money supply, money multiplier, and also what does the bank play a role in the money multiplier and what exactly a bank does. These three types is mostly related to Indian economy. Whatever basic notes you have referred with respect to Indian economy, those would carry all the three explanations on all of this. This two-part, regulations and recent development, is mostly coming from the newspaper. So we have seen that this part and even money related things, these have mostly been exhausted. So if the question will come from this, it would be either very easy or the options would be difficult. What has been left is still this part. Recent development can anything. For example, we discussed two questions on urban cooperative banks. One, I told you how there was a conflict between the RBI and the Ministry of Finance, and then therefore there are three statement-based questions with respect to provisions. How does the governor of RBI is appointed? So those were mostly recent development. So अब जो इससे बनेगा question, if you've covered this static, most of the questions will come from these two ends. The question complexity would rise. This is something you would need to cover if this is done. So basic macroeconomics, तीनों का you've done. Then these two parts is something which you need to keep an eye on. Recent development अगर ज़्यादा नहीं हुए हैं, the probability of question coming from banking would be less than the probability comes from financial market or any other development that has happened with respect to money or even finance. Is this clear? The learning from this analysis should be what type of questions are being asked. You don't have to know the answer, though I'm discussing the answer in detail, so there's no confusion with respect to topic. But right now the learning should be how to prepare any particular topic for specifically for prelims. The second part of the analysis, that is the Indian economy part, that is to be prepared along with mains. But ये questions जितने भी हैं ये सिर्फ prelim specific हैं. This part is not asked in mains. It's only specific to prelims, that what exactly happens to money supply or what is money multiplier. They don't ask such questions in mains because it's not part of the syllabus. So specific prelims oriented ही preparation है. How much you have to go in, this comes from whatever we discussed yesterday. Is this clear? Then the fourth type of questions which we'll start here have come from another topic, that is payment systems. What do you understand by payment systems? For example, ATM or even your cards, UPI, what function do they perform? So if the ATM is being used, you can use any bank's ATM in any particular another bank's ATM. How does that function operate? Settlement कैसे होती है? Interbank. So how does that happen? So there are two things here. One is, what exactly is the technology behind the payment settlement system or the payment system, and the second is, what is the clearing and settlement system? What do we mean by clearing and settlement system? So technology is, for example, if you use a card, there's a magnetic strip or a chip in the card. If you use UPI, you should know what exactly is the technology behind UPI. Who developed that technology? So basics of the technology and who developed it. And when I mean by basics, basics also would include how does it function. UPS has asked multiple times of this question. For example, chip and pin based has 2-factor authentication. UPI has how much factor authentication? Though we use it on a daily basis, but you still would not realize कि कितना है. तो वो पहले ही prepared होना है हर technology पे, whatever payment system technology. The reason behind question, why they asking from payment system, because this is something you are using it on a daily basis. A lot of UPSC questions, whether it is in environment, polity or economics, comes from things of daily use which you have been using. Those technologies is something which UPSC will pick up on. How do ATMs operate? What technology is behind ATMs? Who links all the ATMs? Chip and pin, what is the difference between if a card has chip or if a card has a magnetic strip? What is the regulations behind that? So all of those questions, the basics, and also who developed that particular technology. Then what do we mean by clearing and settlement? So whenever you use a particular payment system technology, money has to be debited from one account and has to be credited to another account. This function of clearing both the accounts and settling the transaction is what we call as clearing and settlement. Most of the clearing and settlement there have been number of bodies both in financial market and also the money market. UPSC has asked questions on both front. Clearing and settlement bodies in financial market has also been asked. We'll see those questions in financial markets today. So this payment systems, there's no separate source from which you can read. This is mostly out of curiosity which you need to prepare. What exactly is the newest technology that has come in the market? UPI किस form में, for example, if you don't have internet, can you still use UPI? *99# is a system. So all of this is general awareness which you need to have on payment system. We'll see in the questions itself. So from these 4 topics, you need to draw, or similarly from other topics, we'll draw what exactly is the nature of the questions being asked, so that we need to know in what direction we are going. Is this clear? Now payment systems, what questions were asked? Okay, so this is payment ecosystem. Year 2017, so roughly around the same banking year, so most of the payment settlement systems have been asked. National Payment Corporation of India helps in promoting financial inclusion in the country. So if you heard about who developed UPI? NPCI. UPI is based on what technology? कैसे हो जाता वो एक ही बार में ट्रांसफर? Everybody has used UPI. What exactly is the technology behind UPI? So NPCI got famous because number of developments NPCI have done. It got famous because of RuPay card. It became famous because of UPI. Is there any other payment settlement system, payment systems designed by NPCI? Aadhaar enabled payment systems. Anything else? National, linking the ATMs. Anything else? Have you heard of IMPS? What is the difference between these 3? Is there a time difference between these two? Have you heard of these three? Who has created all of this? This is what you need to know. Use सबने किया है, but information किसी के पास नहीं है. This technology is what was built by NPCI, and UPI is powered by IMPS. The same technology, IMPS, is being used in UPI. The interface is much easy as compared to what the IMPS offers. Same technology है, कुछ भी फर्क नहीं है. NEFT and RTGS have been created by RBI. IMPS has been created by NPCI. So all of these payment systems which are coming in news, and even if they are not in news, you have to prepare, because this is something which you are using on a daily basis. You need to know the difference between all three. For example, NEFT, RTGS, so we would know the difference. 24 hours in RTGS. Anything else? The amount is different. It is gross settlement in real time. The first transaction takes time, but the next transactions happens in real time. This is. So try to prepare all of this which you are using on a daily basis. Try to know the difference between all three. NPCI has launched RuPay, a card payment system, a card payment scheme. This RuPay was launched in this particular year. This is why the question. Following years, every year there was a question on NPCI. Both the statements are correct. So we have mostly international companies which are working for providing card payment systems, such as, who's providing? Visa and MasterCard. We wanted to develop an indigenous scheme, that is RuPay, developed by NPCI. What is the ownership structure of NPCI? See, this is how you prepare all of the things regarding this. So when I said payment systems, technology, I said features of technology. Second, who developed it? You need to know all the features of who developed it. It's a non-for-profit organization. The Indian Bank Associations together has created NPCI in order to promote financial inclusion. Starting के payment system सारे ही RBI ने बनाए थे. Then NPCI was created. All of the technology now is created by NPCI. See, these are the various recently operated platforms. RuPay, the unified payment. What is Bharat Bill Payments? Number of services you can pay bill. This is type of a payment aggregator. You can pay number of services you can pay through this. Aadhaar enabled or FASTag. I think FASTag, this year there was a question on FASTag. In mains, there was a question on FASTag. That what exactly is the technology behind FASTag? What is the technology? RFID. So this is how you prepare whatever is in use. Something of general awareness. This is how payment systems questions have been asked. Okay. Which of the following is the most likely consequence of implementing UPI? Read all the 4 statements, then only pick the right answer. Mobile wallets will not be necessary for online payments. So UPI, there is direct bank-to-bank transfer. Digital currency will totally replace the physical currency in about 2 decades. Is there any reference to digital currency? Doesn't make sense. FDI inflows will drastically increase. Direct transfer of subsidies to poor people will become very effective. How? So direct transfer UPI से कैसे होगा? So government has a list of bank accounts. So how is UPI helping them make the transfer easy? कैसे बताओ? Account number, phone number हो linked to UPI, then only I can send you a UPI. If you do not have a phone number or a UPI address, barcode. So that means I'll collect barcode of everyone who is coming for a scheme. The answer would be mobile wallets will not be necessary. Why? What is the function of a mobile wallet? You first need to put in the money in the wallet, and then the wallet money could be used. But if it directly allows you to transfer bank to bank, wallet would not be necessary. This option though looks relatable but doesn't make a lot of sense. बैंक अकाउंट होना बहुत जरूरी है डायरेक्ट ट्रांसफर के लिए. The payment system could be anyone. Is it clear why the option would be A? Which one of the following best describes the merchant discount rate sometimes seen in the news? Have you heard about MDR? This is again based on awareness. A lot of times when you use your debit or credit card for transactions, the person who's selling you the product demands 1 or 2% extra. Has anyone faced this? That if you pay by card, the merchant from whom you're buying the product is going to charge 1 or 2% extra on the transaction. Why is he charging extra on the transaction? Because he has to pay something called as merchant discount rate. The amount, the charge to a merchant by a bank for accepting payments from his customers through the bank डेबिट कार्ड. Whoever is providing the debit card also charges a fees. तो वो fees के पैसे निकालने के लिए we have the merchant discount rate. Again, something which is general awareness. This cannot be prepared separately. This is what is a merchant discount rate. Which one of the following links all the ATMs in the country? So if you use one ATM card in any particular bank ATM machine, you still works. How does it work? Has everyone done this? Used any bank's ATM in any particular, how is it functioning? Or functioning also, the technology allows the clearing and settlement immediately. There's no time lag, because if there's a time lag, there would be a problem. So you could withdraw the money from the ATM, it does not get clear or settled, then you can use the same money again. So who has solved this problem? It has been done by the NPCI. These two bodies, NPCI and RBI, these two bodies have been responsible for making all of the payment and settlement systems in the country. Indian Bank Association, he owned NPCI. Number of banks together under a consortium have come and created the NPCI. What's the technology called? National Financial Switch. So any development of NPCI has to be covered. NFA, National Financial Switch. With reference to digital payments, consider the following statements. Bhim app allows the user to transfer money to anyone with a UBI enabled bank account. Bhim app was the first one to allow UPI transactions. While a chip PIN debit card has 4-factor authentication, Bhim app only has 2 factors of authentication. Has anyone used any app for UPI? Google Pay, Paytm or any other phone pay app? How many factors of authentication you have in that particular transaction when you want to make? 2. How? एक तो पिन डालना पड़ेगा. What else? Fingerprint for? Huh? You've not used a UPI? Only one. Only UPI. That's the only PIN code is required. Nothing else. Huh? There are 3 factors of authentication. First, your phone number has to be linked to the bank account. You need to have a UPI address. Until and unless you have a unique UPI ID, how exactly will you make the transaction? Right? This is the first. The second is, how do you open the app? How do you get to the app? You have to open the phone and then get to the app. So you have another factor of authentication for opening the app. And once you want to make a transaction, that is the third factor of authentication. So you cannot use UPI if you don't have a number linked to the bank account. Second, you cannot use it until unless you can open your phone. That is the second factor authentication, trying to reach to the app. And the third is the final PIN, which will help you make the transaction. Right? No? No. How will you open the phone? So how will you, whenever you will get to the app, kuch to password hoga to open the app. You've never used any Google Pay or something. I don't think so. No, it is not additional. Google Pay or koi bhi app, Bhim ki app bhi nahi khulegi without authentication. Your interface of the app will never open. No, not fingerprints. Even if there's no fingerprint, वो phone का lock code पूछेगा. No, there is, you can't reach the app without that. So whenever you want to open the app, you have a factor authentication. It's a 3-factor authentication. That's a glitch. You can't open the app. Then your phone is very highly insecure. कोई भी कर लेगा फिर तो. There is a factor authentication to open the app even if you don't have a lock on the phone. Phone का lock तो is separate. Opening the app also will require an authentication. Either you have the fingerprint or you have to draw the pattern. If you don't have fingerprint or whatever the face recognition, you have to draw the pattern. There is an authentication with the Bhim app. Google Pay also has the same. Both of them, you'll not find, without that you cannot open the app. WhatsApp and other apps, definitely that's an additional feature, but inki app nahi khulegi without that. Also, this chip and PIN debit card has 4-factor authentication. So you've used a debit card with chip and PIN. How many factors of authentication? 1. How 2 or how 1? 1 is your unique card that the information goes in the chip, and the second is the PIN which you use. There are only 2 factors of authentication while using a card. But while using the Bheem app, specifically Bheem app, also Google Pay. Google Pay I've used, I know you cannot open the app without an authentication. And in fact, a lot of times what has happened these days is if you do not have internet connection or you do not have mobile connection, then also the app does not work. For some it does, for some it does not. This also is a glitch in Google Pay, that if you do not have a working connection to the telecom company, the app does not work. You need a working connection to a company. This is related to the number connected to the bank account. So the first factor authentication was the relation of number. So वो mobile phone के connection से आता है. Now in some days it still works. This is slightly surprising. But Bheem app or even Google Pay you cannot open without a password. There has to be a password. हाँ, Paytm allow कर सकता है, but this specifically asking Bheem app, not any UPI app. 2 apps I'm sure, because I've used both Bheem app and Google Pay, you cannot open the app without an authentication of that particular phone. So answer is only one. It has 3 factors and chip and pin has 2 factors. So it's specific to the app, not to any UPI app. IMPS. जो IMPS NPC है, same IMPS is being used for transfer this. We'll discuss that sometime later. The mode of ऐसे तो फिर RTGS NEFT also you would know. Reserve Bank of India's recent directives relating to storage of payment system data. This was a recent development in the payment systems. A notification came out with respect to this. Storage of payment system data, popularly known as the data diktat, commanded the payment system providers that first, they shall ensure that entire data relating to payment systems operated by them are stored in a system only in India. Read the second and the third if they make sense with respect to storage of payment data. They shall ensure that the systems are owned and operated by public sector enterprises. Now this see how what exactly would be the relevance of that you can only store it in PSUs. Do PSUs have a better technology with respect to data storage, or do they have excess capacity of data storage? So does it make any sense that public sector enterprise will only hold your data? And how many companies would be ready to share it with public sector, knowing their efficiency with respect to, again, data servers and also privacy? They shall submit the consolidated system audit report to the CAG of India by the end of the calendar year. What's the function of CAG? What is the function of CAG? It's an accountability mechanism to hold the government to account with respect to the money it spends. The problem with CAG in India, it does only after the money has been spent, right? But it is only holding public or the government companies into account. The government and the government companies, the PSUs, right? Can it hold the private sector into account? Can it ask any company to submit consolidated audit reports? So both of these statements do not make any sense. Even if you don't know, if you see, why will any private company give an audited report to the Comptroller and Auditor General? In fact, if you've read about PPP, public-private partnerships, this is a very big problem there, because there is a partnership, money is being spent. Now, the government wants that the company who's delivering on the project should be audited by CAG so that they know what exactly the actual expenditure. That becomes a problem. No private company is ready to do that. So 2 and 3 are incorrect. The answer is 1. If you know the fact, this is easy. Even if you don't know, if you just see the reasoning behind 2 and 3, they don't have any relevance. Answer is 1 only. And next is inflation and recession. Though related to money and money supply, there are 3 types of questions which they have asked from inflation. First, from the topic of inflation, they've asked the causes of inflation. They've asked measurement of inflation. And finally, they've asked control of inflation. These are the 3 dimensions which has been covered over the years. What are the various causes of inflation? Measurement of inflation, the various indices, who publishes those indices, what is their base year, significant amount of information on all. And how do we control inflation? Who's responsible for controlling inflation? Who's responsible for controlling inflation? Is it the RBI only? The government also has a role to play in control of inflation. So all the 3 can be asked. In fact, this year they asked a question in mains on inflation. That why does India have food inflation? What would be the answer? Why does India consistently have food inflation? What are the causes of inflation? One is demand pull, the other is cost push. Any other? ये दोनों तो टेम्पररी हैं, सप्लाई का शॉक हुआ तो कॉस्ट पुश, और डिमांड पुल बिकॉज टेम्परली द डिमांड बिकेम हाई. These are the two temporary causes because of the cyclical movement. These can happen. This can happen in any country. What is peculiar with India that India has food inflation? We have another cause of inflation which we call as the structural causes of inflation. The economy structure is such a problem that how the activities are done, what is the level of technology, what is the level of infrastructure, that you will always have food inflation problems. So this is where the answer was structural. For example, we have tremendous amount of regulations coming from APMC. Then we have another problems that comes from infrastructure. तो ये structural problem ही वही answer था. In fact, if you see what was the reason for asking that particular question, because this year economic survey said food inflation should be not measured or should not be controlled by RBI. They mentioned it specifically, created one whole chapter on this topic of food inflation and how RBI cannot help with food inflation. The same thing they asked as a 10 marker question in mains. UPSC, they have been in prelims, they have been asking these three. This has been a regular trend. Economic survey talked about food inflation and inability of the RBI to control food inflation because the reasons are structural in nature. Reasons are not related to money demand and money supply. Reasons are related to the structure which the government can only control, not the RBI. This was the 10 marker and the answer was in that chapter itself. Which of the following brings out the consumer price index for industrial workers? There are different types of measurement tools for inflation. What are those? Is it clear the three types of questions which will come from inflation? Now, what exactly, at what points are we measuring inflation? India measures inflation at what points? One is consumer level and the other is wholesale. Why wholesale? Ideally, every country measures it at the production level, something called as the producer price index. We don't have significant data or better data collection and production. So what we do is we collect it at wholesale, which is WPI, and then retail level, that is called as CPI. CPI has number of indices. We have CPI rural, CPI urban. We have CPI specific to the states also. And then we have CPI agricultural labor, CPI industrial worker, and CPI rural labor. Manrega mein this is a problem where they want their index wages indexed to rural labor and not agricultural labor. Manrega ki jo wages hain wo agricultural labor se indexed hai. You have CPI combined also, rural and urban combined, that is also. Now, who publishes all of this? First, who publishes WPI? Who? Ministry of Commerce. What is the office name? The Office of the Economic Advisor, DPIET, is what comes out with WPI. CPI, combined rural and urban. NSO. Earlier it was CSO, but CSO and NSSO were combined into one office, that is NSO. These three? The answer. This is done by Labor Bureau. So basics of inflation and measurement of inflation, you should know that what exactly does what. And inka basket also will come to another question which has come on basket of WPI and CPI. The answer here is the Labor Bureau. With reference to inflation in India, which of the following statement is correct? Controlling inflation is responsibility of Government of India only. Reserve Bank has no role in controlling inflation. Decreased money circulation helps in controlling inflation. Or increased money circulation helps in controlling inflation. Which one? See, the quantity theory of money says, so apart from these three factors which I told you causes of inflation, there is another cause of inflation which is quantity of money, that is what happens here. If this output of the economy does not change, this remains constant. Money की अगर quantity बढ़ेगी तो price level भी बढ़ेगा. There is an explanation to this, that if there is too much money chasing few goods, the value of the good, that is the price, will rise or the value of money will fall. Why? Why? Why does too much money chasing few goods leads to fall in value of money? It is scarce. So from where is the value of money coming in? How do we decide the value of money? Value of money comes from supply of money with respect to supply of goods. If this does not change, but this increases, value will fall. This is the numerical or the expression for it. If this does not change, supply of goods does not change, but money supply increases, the price level will also increase. Price level will increase, that is nothing but inflation. Increase in the general price level or fall in the value of money, both mean the same thing. So, decreased money circulation helps in controlling. Increased money supply will cause more inflation. Is it clear? Why? Because value of money comes from supply of money with respect to supply of goods and services. This is the reason why answer is C. In fact, this we discussed yesterday also when I said that if government will control money, they can print more. If they print more, inflation will happen. Inflation will happen, government will be benefited because government is the borrower. This is why control of money is given to an independent authority, which is the central bank. People will trust the independent authority. Weightage of food in consumer price index is higher than in WPI. Yes. So there are three ways of, or 2 points at which we measure. At the wholesale level, that is called as WPI, and at the retail level, that is called as CPI. Now, what exactly happens in these indices? How are these indices created? First, whenever we are creating any particular index, we need to clarify what exactly is the basket of goods. Then, secondly, what we do? Before base year, are all the goods which have been selected have the same value? Is it a normal average of all the goods being taken? We have, based on significance of goods, we assign them weights. It's a weighted average. And then we compare the weighted average across a base year. This is how the index is constructed. You first draw a basket, then you have assigned weights to them, and then you have a base year. How is weights assigned in CPI? Anyone has an idea? WPI also follows the same. How are weights assigned in CPI? Why does it get 45? What is the reason behind giving food 45? When we are measuring it in for retail level, we want to check how much price level impacts the consumer. Then if I want to know what exactly is in the consumer basket and I'm assigning the significance, how would I know which good is more significant for consumer? That I am measuring what is the percentage of total expenditure is made on that good. Jin good items pay, he has made more expenditure, those become more significant. Now if I calculate it at wholesale level, on wholesale level, in order to assign weight, I assign weight based on how much the production level is. Now for food production and for food usage, where will the weight be higher? The weight will be higher in this. So if you assign, if you know the basics of measurement, you don't have to learn anything. You don't have to learn the numbers. If you know on what basis is the weight assigned, you would know that consumer basket gives more weightage to food because their expenditure is more. But if I count the total production of the economy, food ka weight बहुत कम हो जाएगा. Because there are other also goods which are being produced which will have more weight. तो यहाँ weight assign होता है production पे, here the weight is assigned on expenditure being made. So this statement that weightage of food is higher than that in this is correct. The WPI does not capture change in prices of services which CPI does. Are the consumers using both goods and services? So in this basket, will I have services or not? Yes. And do we have services in WPI? WPI is only measuring production of goods. This is one of the shortcomings of WPI. This is correct. Reserve Bank of India has now adopted WPI as the key measure of inflation and to decide on changing the key policy rate. We discussed this in Monetary Policy Committee. What have they decided to accept? they do it on CPI. Why CPI not WPI? पहले WPI था. Why CPI not WPI? Why? Yes, because this inflation impacts the common man. Production में जो inflation होगा वो pass on हो सकता है. So we want to know what exactly is the real impact which the consumer faces. This is why you use CPI and not WPI. Who decided this CPI and not WPI? Did the MPC decide WPI or CPI? MPC को तो टारगेट दिया है कि आपको अचीव करना है. आप क्या डिसाइड करोगे? इंटरेस्ट रेट. Both of this indicator and the target was given by the government after the Urujit Patel committee report what should be targeted. They accepted it and made changes in the monetary policy in the country. Monetary policy committee only decides interest rate to achieve the target. Which of the following steps is most likely to be taken in the time of economic recession? So if you have questions with respect to economic growth or economic recession, you need to use this equation, expenditure side. Recession means that these four, or apart from government, these three are not working. Consumption is not happening, investment is not happening, or also exports are not happening. These are the three factors on which your growth will depend. This factor. Cut in tax rates accompanied by increase in interest rates. If the government cuts the tax rate, will they invest more? Therefore, I will come out of recession. But if I increase the interest rate, will they both be able to take more loans? So that means this is not correct. Increase in expenditure on public projects. So if the government starts spending more, will my GDP increase? If my GDP increase, will I come out of recession? Your answer is the third one, increase in tax rates accompanied by reduction of, ये दोनों उल्टे हैं. If I increase the interest rate, will they invest? They will also not be able to spend. This is something which they will not do. The fourth one is decrease in expenditure, not mentioned here. Answer is B. Is it clear? Use this equation always, you'll be able to solve such type of questions. How to come out of recession, you see what is the impact on these four variables. Demand pull inflation. With reference to Indian economy, demand pull inflation can be caused by which of the following? Demand pull inflation. Who creates the demand in the economy? This is your total, this is your output, and this is your general price level. This is my aggregate demand and this is my aggregate supply. Demand pull inflation would be, from where does the demand come for our total economy? What is the aggregate demand of the total economy? It comes from household, consumption expenditure comes from firms, investment expenditure comes from rest of the world, that is aggregate demand भी same होगा. जो aggregate demand meet कर जाती है supply को, वही GDP है. Expansionary policies followed by the government. Expansionary policies would mean increase in expenditure. Increase in expenditure would lead to demand pull inflation. Aggregate demand will increase. Demand pull inflation, this will happen. Fiscal stimulus. What do you mean by fiscal stimulus? Extreme of expansion is stimulus. Both are the same. Extreme of expansion is itself stimulus, so even this is correct. Inflation indexing wages. What do you mean by inflation indexing wages? that wages are increasing as linked to what the inflation is. If inflation happened 5%, wage also increased by 5%. Will it lead to more demand? How? So if I was buying 5 kg rice, I can still now afford 5 kg rice because price increase हुआ, मेरी wage भी उतनी increase हुई. Why will I demand more? If there is inflation index wage, I can afford only what previously I was buying because price बढ़ा है तो मेरी भी wage उतनी बढ़ी. This would be a cause of inflation, but from the supply side. Why? Because now producer has to give more. Though producer is earning more, but producer also has to give more. But this is not a demand pull inflation. Higher purchasing power. If income rises, C will rise. Rising interest rates. If interest rates are high, will C or I increase? They will fall. We want increase. This is incorrect. So you have 1, 2 and 4. Wages I have to give more, right? What if my price of the product has not increased? What is inflation? General price level. What if my product price did not increase, but now I have to pay more wages because generally it is increasing for the worker. Worker तो सभी खरीद रहा है. जरूरी नहीं है वो प्रोडक्ट वही खरीद रहा है जो आप बेच रहे हो, जहां वो काम कर रहा है. उसका प्रोडक्ट प्राइस नहीं बढ़ा, बट वेज देनी पड़ी ज्यादा. You are assuming it will increase, but general price level it might not have increased, or might not have increased to the same level what the general level was. General level inflation happened 5%, मेरा सिर्फ 2% ही प्राइस बढ़ा मेरे प्रोडक्ट का. I have to pay 105, but I'm not getting benefit out of that 102, or I'm not able to sell that 102. So my cost of production increased. Supply side से inflation होगा. Is it clear? Demand pull inflation. This is why wage shock is a cost push factor. Wage shock क्यों आएगा? इसीलिए आएगा यूनियन बाजी, इसीलिए से आप प्राइस बढ़वाते थे. Tackling inflation. Which of the following is responsible for maintaining price stability by controlling inflation? Department of Consumer Affairs, Expenditure Management Commission, FSDC or RBI? Is it clear? It's a very basic question. Fiscal policy and government budgeting. Now, what are the type of questions they ask here? What do you understand by fiscal policy? This is an area where they have picked up in the last few years. They are asking multiple questions from this end. Fiscal policy means what? Government policy of tax, government policy of expenditure, and if there is a mismatch between the two, then you have to take a deficit, and if the deficit combines, it becomes a deficit of multiple years combined to form a debt. And government, also we have relation between center and state. These are the 4 dimensions where they have asked questions. Now what type of questions come? For tax and expenditure, classification of tax, classification of expenditure. What is revenue, what is capital expenditure, revenue expenditure, all types of such classifications. The second type of question that comes on tax or expenditure is recent developments. If there is a new tax introduced in the budget, GST has certain features. GST किस product पे क्या है, exempt or not, all the types of recent developments that happens on the tax or the expenditure front. Most of the recent developments you'll find as a part of budget. Expenditure का recent development are the schemes and policies which the government announce. That also becomes part of my fiscal policy. Deficit and debt, what exactly they ask here? They ask the meaning of various deficits. Then they can ask the classification of debt of country. From where the money has been taken, internal sources, what the money has been taken, external sources, what the classification is. And for preparation of classification of debt, every year, there's a government report on classification of debt. So you can read the summary of that. They give the summary in the first 20 pages itself. Every year, there is a government report on its debt profile. Every year, internal, external, दोनों की अलग report है. This is also a very good source of information for number of questions. Center-state relations, the various dynamics, पैसे कहाँ से आते हैं, what are the various sources, and second is any contentious issues on any particular source of finance between the two. That also can be asked in prelims. Though right now what they have covered on center and state is the finance commission dynamics. But they can go beyond that, special status, the centrally sponsored scheme, number of other dimensions also, the tax dimension of GST compensation also, number of things they can ask here. Right now they have been focused here. Few questions here. This is not tested apart from just one topic, that is finance commission. This year the question was on finance commission. Is it clear the 4 types of questions that will be asked in public finance and fiscal policy? Year 2015, 14th Finance Commission, which of the following statement is correct? It has increased the share of states in central divisible pool from 32 to 42%. Yes, for the first time that happened. Why did this change happen? Earlier it was in the range till 32 was the maximum. एकदम से 10% कैसे बढ़ा दिया? कुछ और था. What? Conflict. Right now states are demanding. What is the 15th Finance Commission reward? 41%. What are the states demanding? 50%. Do you think that will be accepted? Chances are less. It might be accepted. Chances are very less. Why did this happen then? Abrogation of Article 370. Did it happen in 2015? Planning Commission was abolished in 2014. There was a substantial amount of fund that was coming from Planning Commission, which is now stopped. So this is why they had to increase it from 32 to 42. There was something called as Central Assistance to State Plans. That Central Assistance to State Plans used to come from a Gadkil-Mukherjee formula. That formula of general states and special category states had been abolished. So that quantum of fund was reduced. This is why Finance Commission balanced it with increasing by 10%. That Planning Commission fund no longer comes in because Niti Aayog does not have the function of distribution of funds. Scheme ka paisa aata hai, that comes from Ministry of Finance. So central sector and centrally sponsors are still going on, that Ministry of Finance handles. But the central assistance to state plans does not come anymore. This is why this 32 to 42. It made recommendations concerning sector specific grants. What is the function of Finance Commission? There are 2 functions, major functions. One is the vertical devolution, that is deciding how much center will get from states will get from the center. This is 32 to 42, whatever the amount is. Second is horizontal. What is horizontal devolution? How will each state get? Iska bhi formula decide karti hai Finance Commission. This is what was asked this year. Then what does the Finance Commission do? Yes, this is a very important function of Finance Commission, that the Finance Commission will provide grants in aid. There have been 3 specific functions which every Finance Commission will do. 1, they will provide grants to those states which have a revenue deficit. This is called as the revenue deficit grant. They will help provide grants for local self-government and disaster management. Roughly all Finance Commission will provide this. In fact, this is a role. Is it a constitutional role? Under what article? 280 तो Finance Commission का बनाने के लिए बात की है. Grants का Article 275, statutory grants from the center to states. Article 282 is discretionary grants from center to states, where they give money in the form of centrally sponsored scheme or central sector scheme. If this budget, if you've read something about the budget, there have been number of schemes being implemented in 2 states, Andhra Pradesh and Bihar. All of them are central sector. Grants in there 275. Now these 3 every Finance Commission gives. Apart from that, they can create criteria on what exactly more grants they can give. For example, 15th Finance Commission said that we are going to give grants related to performance. They also gave grants to certain special states, and they also had sector specific grant. Sector specific on say health, education, law and order. They have given this grant. In fact, one of the states is complaining they have not got the health grant which has been promised by Finance Commission. This is an issue right now. 14th Finance Commission did not give this. Every Finance Commission will have its own criteria of giving the grants. This is something all follow. Others, they could be unique to every Finance Commission. 14th Finance Commission did not have sector specific. 15th introduced again sector specific. So this is incorrect. Whatever Finance Commission reward next year will come, 16th Finance Commission for 2025 to 30, that becomes important, not just vertical and horizontal. You also need to know about grants and aid. Is it clear? Answer is 1 only. The recommendations given by the Finance Commission, is there a compulsion to accept those? Is there a compulsion? They are only recommendatory in nature, but the governments have been doing it as per convention. Conventional, they've always accepted whatever Finance Commission has said. Who decides the appointment of Finance Commission? The president, the only center has control. And who gives them the terms of reference? क्या काम करना है, क्या additional करना है, this has to be given in something called as terms of reference. They also are controversial. UPSC is asked in mains in 2020, what was the terms of reference given to the 15th Finance Commission? Similarly, what are the terms of reference given to 16th Finance Commission? Terms of reference भी बहुत important है कि आपको क्या decide, हमें क्या क्या recommend करना है. That is also unilaterally decided by center. States don't have any role. Either in appointment or terms of reference, they don't have any role. There is a persistent deficit budget year after year. Which of the following activities can be done by the government to reduce the deficit? What is the meaning of deficit? The deficit is, I have expenditure more than the tax or more than the revenue which I have collected in a particular time period. Deficit is always time specific. Debt is combined deficits. Uska koi time ka component nahi hai. It's a stock variable. Deficit will always have a time component, that what exactly was my expenditure high. For example, when the government says we are expecting revenue of 2 lakh crore rupees, but my expenditure expected in the year is 3 lakh crore. So I have a deficit of 1 lakh crore. Now, every budget, the government will tell what is their expected deficit, how much more expenditure they will do as compared to the revenue which they have estimated. If I reduce the revenue expenditure, if I reduce the expenditure, will my deficit be low? Simple. Introducing new welfare schemes. If I introduce schemes, will be more expenditure, less expenditure? Rationalize subsidies. Rationalize subsidies is controlling the amount of money spent on subsidy. Expenditure low or high? This is controlling deficit. Expanding industry. This would be more expenditure, less expenditure? 1 and 3. Is it clear? Subsidy or welfare schemes, both of them are part of revenue or capital expenditure? Revenue or capital? There are two types of expenditures you can have, revenue or capital. This revenue, when I say revenue here, I mean total receipts of the government. It's both revenue, yes. The current expenditures of the government. Same question, this was repeated, just added one more option, that is reducing import duty. If I reduce the import duty, what will be the implication on deficit? My tax revenue will decrease. My tax revenue decrease, that means I have to borrow more. Deficit will be more. This is incorrect. Restart the 3 stream. Question got as it is repeated. 1 and 3 is the answer. Which of the following are included in capital budget of the government of India? Budget has 2 classifications. What exactly? The expenditures or the revenue which we collect or the receipts we collect can be classified into 2 heads, that is revenue and capital. Revenue ka incoming is called as revenue receipts and revenue outgoing is similarly capital receipts and capital expenditure. When did the government accept this? And what was the classification before that? Yes, before that it was plan and non-plan. The difference was whatever is in the plan will be as part of the plan budget and whatever is not part of the plan will be non-plan expenditure. Expenditure on, or what is the difference between revenue and capital? Then only we can solve this. What is the difference between revenue and capital? This is my current receipt and current expenditure. That means day-to-day activities. Capital receipts or expenditure is something which will impact my wealth, that is my asset and liability. Anything that impacts my asset or liability structure is capital budget. Anything which impacts my current revenue or current expenditure is my revenue budget. In fact, something which does not impact asset liability is revenue. Current is revenue. Expenditure on acquisition of assets like road, buildings and machinery. This is capital or revenue? Loans received from foreign governments. Why capital? Because I am taking in a liability. Anything impacting my asset liability structure. Loans and advances granted to states and union territories. If I give a loan to someone, that is state and union territory, is it capital or revenue? Why? Because loan creation is an asset for me because it will earn interest. This received is liability and given is asset. So the answer here would be 1, 2 and 3. Is it clear? Loans received from foreign governments would be capital receipt or capital expenditure? Capital receipt. Capital receipt का मतलब क्या है? Asset liability. And receipt is incoming. When will I have money incoming? Either I reduce the asset, तभी पैसा आएगा, or I will add a liability. And this taking money is adding a liability. The other type is reducing asset. What is it called? Reducing asset? Disinvestment. Selling the asset completely is 100% strategic sale, otherwise disinvestment. Expenditure would be that my asset has been added or my liability has been reduced. This first is asset addition, the next is liability addition, receipt, and the third is asset creation, loan. All of them part of capital. Classification is mostly what they have asked, capital, revenue. With reference to Financial Stability and Developmental Council, consider the following statements. This is a question in 2016. The relevance of this body was talked about by Economic Survey. That particular year, the Economic Survey dedicated one chapter to what exactly is regulation of financial sector in the country. They said this regulation of financial sector is spread across number of bodies. For example, you have regulation of money matters done by RBI. Then you have regulation of the capital markets being done by SEBI. You have regulation of insurance matters being done by, and you have pension matters with. So what the survey said, these 4 bodies are working for regulation of a financial market where the products are getting highly complex in nature, but my regulation is not improving. So in चारों के बीच में coordination होना चाहिए because we already created a body in 2009 which is called as FSDC. Finance Minister is the head of FSDC. This was created after the Raghuram Rajan Committee in 2008 said कि एक supra body होनी चाहिए जो coordination में help करे throughout financial markets. This is the body which the government created with the chairmanship of the Union Finance Minister. The same 2016 year. So this is not a question out of the blue. Economic Survey dedicated one whole chapter and in a complete box they discussed the dynamics of FSDC. This is what the source of the question was. So any discussion that happens in the Economic Survey, so Economic Survey usually comes of 2 parts. The first Economic Survey, what exactly is covered in the Economic Survey? The state of the economy, what they cover, the performance of the economy in 1 year, they cover in part 2, where they give data and where they give the information or the specific government schemes. Analysis नहीं करते वो performance की, वो performance सिर्फ present करते हैं. They don't analyze anything what is good or bad. The first Economic Survey is a complete analytical document. It can talk about number of things that are happening in the Indian economy and can suggest a number of things. For example, they talked about food inflation and how food inflation should not be under the control of RBI because RBI does not have anything to do with food. वो control ही नहीं कर सकते. This is an analytical discussion which would mostly be covered in part 1. Similarly, those economic surveys were covering these type of topics. So वहाँ Arvind Subramaniam did this. He was the chief economic advisor then and talked about this, and this is where the question came in. So economic survey is a document which is very important, both part 1 and part 2, because we've not yet discussed Indian economy. Part 2 पूरा बहुत सारा वहीं से आता है in the paper. It is an organ of Niti Aayog. It has nothing to do with Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog has no regulation function. What is the function of Niti Aayog? Think tank. Think tank के अलावा. What does the Niti Aayog do? Policy suggestions. Anything else? Federalism also. So function of what was the function of Planning Commission? What is the function of Planning Commission? उसी को replace किया था नीति आयोग ने. उनके पास एक critical function था वो कि पैसे भी देते थे वो. नीति आयोग does not give money. The function of नीति आयोग is government has a policy. For example, new education policy. How does the policy get translated on the ground? Is it through laws? Are laws governing our policy? For example, new education policy के लिए क्या law है? Are there laws for implementation of policy? Policy is just a general direction, a vision or mission of the government in a particular sector. कि ये हमारी electronics policy है, हमारी education policy है, हमारी sports policy है. इस policy को I will have to break down into a umbrella program, और umbrella program एक एक चीज cover करेगा schemes है. For example, new education policy, my program is Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan. My scheme is say PM Shri. So there are number of schemes which can target different sectors of the policy. Policy is always translated through a program and a scheme. This program and scheme ka design formulation is what was being done by Planning Commission, but now it's being done by Niti Aayog. Planning Commission has two functions: designing program and schemes and then also giving money for the same. They don't have the money function, they only can design the program and scheme. This is the most important function of Niti Aayog. Most of the schemes, whatever have been designed, Ayushman Bharat se lekar sab wo Niti Aayog ne banaya hai. So design of program and scheme is done through this policy body. Another function which Planning Commission had was that Planning Commission was also responsible for strategic planning. In fact, that was the most critical function of Planning Commission. Right now, whenever the government has the expenditure plan, what is the time duration of that? 1 year only. But any particular program, to give you any substantial benefit on the ground, you need to have a plan for that particular policy or a program for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. This link is now missing. Planning Commission used to have a strategic plan for any program or scheme for a period of 5 years. तो हम उस पूरे प्रोग्राम में 5 साल तक क्या करेंगे वो पहले डिसाइडेड था. Now we don't have that link. नीति आयोग has been given this recommendatory link कि अगर हमें किसी टाइम के लिए प्लान करना है, whether we have to plan for 3 year, we have to plan for 5 year, 7 year, we are going to give you a need. You can then tell us what to do. So this is why they prepared 3-year action agenda. That was a 3-year plan. Then after that they prepared India at 75. 3-year action agenda was for 2016 to 19. India at 75 policy priorities. That document was for 19 to 22. So from time to time, the government can tell them to form a plan for a particular strategy for a particular time period. Planning Commission का तो a major role था. This was a secondary role. This was the major role. Now Niti Aayog has this role if the government will ask them to do so. Here it does not have anything to do with regulation. So if you understand the basics of how the Indian economy is structured, you'll be able to solve such questions. It is headed by Union Finance Minister, yes. It monitors. Is it clear how supervision is related? Macro-prudential supervision, सारे regulators का uniformity यहाँ से आएगी. This is why macro-prudential supervision covering everything. Answer here would be 2 and 3. If you understand Niti Aayog, you would be able to eliminate A and D. 3 is automatically correct, then you'll have to take a chance on 2. If you don't know, you can definitely take a chance. 2 ऑप्शन तक आ गया क्योंकि नीति आयोग का पता कुछ रेगुलेशन से कोई they don't have any function. When we say think tank role of Niti Aayog, what do we mean by that? Think tank भी role है उनका. What do you mean by think tank? Huh? Analysis of what? What do you mean by think tank? Yes, so the idea is the Prime Minister or the government might have some idea but do not know what exactly would be the implication of the idea. So Prime Minister said कि simultaneous election होना चाहिए, one nation, one election. Now, what would be the implication, legal implications, the financial implications, the administrative implication? Niti Aayog prepared a report. Government said methanol economy. Government said hydrogen-based economy. Who will give you the complete dynamics of that idea is the think tank. आप सोचो उसका dynamics they will present. Otherwise, the role of a think tank is to present ideas themselves. For example, Delhi has a pollution problem. Who will give them the idea? The think tank has to give the idea. That pollution problem can be solved like this. Problem is of sewage. Problem is of say road connectivity. Think tank idea देगा कि आपको ये solve करना है. उसके लिए they can have a lot of research. Atal Innovation Mission is a part of think tank. That we are trying to think of new ideas. We have established Atal Thinking Labs in schools and colleges to bring in new ideas to solve any problem that exists in the economy or society. One Nation, One Election की पहली report नीति आयोग ने ही बनाई थी. The term base erosion and profit shifting is seen is sometimes seen in the news in the context of mining operation, curbing of tax evasion, exploitation of genetic resources, lack of consideration of environmental cost in planning. Have you heard of this base erosion profit shifting? What happens here? The exploitation of differential tax. Different territories have different tax system. So wherever the tax is low, I will take the benefit of it. How? Famous example is the most valuable company in the world is responsible for most of this. Apple is a company, office headquarters in. Where is most of their IPR registered? सारा प्रॉफिट वो आयरलैंड से दिखाता है. Now what does Apple does? For example, if Apple has tax in US is say 20%, tax in Ireland is 5%. Differential tax का benefit लेना है. So what they do is, if I have $100 profit in US, I will have to pay 20% tax. So what I do is, I reduce the level of profit making in US by eroding the base and shifting my profit to an territory where the tax is less. A lot of times software companies, number of companies can do this, shift their profit. Accounting practices say this can be done. I reduced my tax in this country to reduce my tax burden and shifted my tax to a country where the burden was low. So what I have done is, I have eroded the base and shifted the profit. This is what is called as base erosion and profit shifting. In order to capture this, we have number of guidelines. There's one body which is responsible for most of those guidelines, that is OECD. So base erosion profit shifting is curbing the tax evasion by multinational companies. So this term came from OECD. ये रेगुलर बिजनेस कर रहे थे, उन्होंने नहीं बोला था कि हमने कुछ फिनोमिना बनाया एंड यू आल्सो डू दिस. दे वर डूइंग दिस एंड देयरफॉर वी क्रिएटेड base erosion profit shifting as a technique for tax evasion. There is another way of doing it, similar process, that is called as transfer pricing. This was covered in this year economic survey, that a lot of companies are doing tax avoidance through transfer pricing. So evasion is illegal. Tax avoidance is using the legal loopholes. Both of them is something which we need to curb because there is loss of tax to some jurisdictions. All of these terms you'll see in news. So tax, base erosion, profit shifting is B. Sovereign gold scheme. This scheme was in news this year. Why? We have reduced the gold duty from 15% to 6%. Why has the government reduced the gold duty? In fact, this is something that the government never wants. Why? First, why there is always high duty on gold? We want to stop the import. This was the reason for this scheme. But why the government has reduced the duty now? Because in this gold scheme, the bonds, I have to redeem the bonds. So the cost of gold is high, government burden of the expenditure will be high. So we reduce the tax so that the prices of gold are reduced. What were the purpose of government sovereign gold bond scheme and gold monetization scheme? This was the year 2016 when these schemes were announced. To bring the idle gold lying with Indian households in the economy. If you see the name gold monetization, the purpose of gold monetization was this: bring back the idle gold. Promote FDI in the gold and jewelry sector. Sovereign gold bond scheme, what were the features? Anyone has an idea? ये तो अभी भी news में है. What are the features of sovereign gold bond scheme? Don't buy physical gold, buy paper from the government. Paper's value will be linked to gold. Is it related to FDI? Reduce India's dependence on gold imports. So if not buying the paper gold, or you're not buying the actual gold but buying paper gold, you will reduce the gold import. Answer is 1 and 3 C. So any expenditure that was government expenditure, new scheme being announced, you need to know the features. What are the most likely advantages of implementing GST? What is GST? Feature? Good and service tax, okay. What are the features of good and service tax? Benefit क्या हुआ है GST में आने का? और why did the system introduce this? One, there were number of taxations. Now we have one tax, right? But this is also not true because one tax but multiple rates. बात वहीं आ गई है. In fact, this video also got famous where वो bun and cream finance minister, he said bun पे 8% और bun पे 5%, cream पे 5%, but bun cream पे 18%. Then what else? Cascading effect, tax on tax. Anything else? Not interest. The major problem was entry tax. From one state to another, there is entry tax, administrative issues. These three have been now replaced by one GST, right? General idea of GST, no features because it's now implementing के advantages पूछी है. Application. It will replace multiple taxes collected by multiple authorities and will thus create a single market in India. Yes, this was the major benefit. It will drastically reduce the current account deficit and will enable to increase its foreign exchange reserves. Will it have an impact on imports? Because if I have deficit means it should have an impact on imports. What will be the impact on imports? And is GST applicable on imports? Yes or no? Customs duty to hai. And customs duty, is customs duty part of GST? Custom duty to entry tax hai, right? Is there a GST on imports? B levy IGST. Because if ये tax नहीं हो तो imports को benefit मिल जाएगा over the domestic good. Any impact on imports because of any of these three? This was mostly tax efficiency within the country. It had nothing to do with imports. Imports के भी सारे tax की जगह IGST आ गया, no significant change. So no significant reduction in imports. This does not make any sense. It will enormously increase the growth and size of economy of India and will enable it to overtake China in the near future. Is it clear? Absolutely has no sense. Answer is? So sometimes they want to make the statement so outrageous that it looks incorrect from the go. अगर मैं यहाँ तक लिखता, this would be a very controversial statement. It will increase the growth and size of economy. It might because customer के लिए product सस्ता है, production improve होगा, tax compliance easy है, and government के लिए भी tax बढ़ेगा. All the three would have an impact on growth and size. But I want to make it completely incorrect. This is why I said it will overtake China in the near future. So then you know it is not correct. Answer here is one only. What's the GDP of China? On market exchange rate. PPP method, it's more than US also. What's the roughly GDP of US? Largest economy is US. What is its GDP? 20 to 22 trillion, right? Second is China. What is GDP? Yes, somewhere around 16, 17 trillion. Or India? 2 to 3 trillion. You can see the vast difference. 3 says 16. There's a huge difference. Another question related to the performance, the trend analysis. Tax revenue as a percentage of GDP has steadily increased in the last decade. What was the last decade for 17? 17 के लिए last decade would be 2006 to 16. Right? Is there an abnormal year here? Yes, 2000. And would my tax revenue as GDP increase steadily if I have an abnormal year? So this statement does not make any. और उसके बाद भी what happened after 2008, if you know some things, after 2008 the growth in India slowed down. If I want to push for growth, what will the government do? If I want to create the conditions for growth, slow down हुआ India में भी. So government क्या करेगा to push for growth? One, government will increase expenditure or the government will reduce. After 2008, the government reduced tax on number of items. Excise duty कम की vehicles पे, the number of taxation items were reduced so that to push the consumption. If this is something you'll do and also government, there is a slowdown, both of the figures mean my tax revenue might not have increased steadily. Fiscal deficit as a percentage of India has increased steadily in the last decade. Have you heard about FRBM? What is FRBM? Fiscal responsibility, budget management, इसका purpose क्या है? This purpose of this is to control the deficits. What it said was deficits are bad. Crowding out तो करते ही हैं, उसके अलावा बहुत सारे there are bad impacts on the economy. Macroeconomic conditions face issue because of deficits, whether it is revenue or fiscal deficit. Now, FRBM said these deficits have to be reduced. When was FRBM introduced? So I am creating a law which is saying control deficit, right? Then can I have steadily increasing deficits? I've created a law which mandates you need to control the deficit, though I don't have a sanction on it, but still there's a law which says this. States को भी हमने implement करवाया है ये. The 11th or the 10th Finance Commission asked the states to first create their own laws as compared to FRBM. And secondly, the government started having strict borrowing guidelines for the states. So we are asking the states to strictly do it. We are also asking the center to do it through FRBM. So I have a disciplinary law on deficit. Will I be having steadily increasing fiscal deficit? This can never happen. अब normal year में definitely reduction से improve होगा. But then it still has to come down because it is a mandate of the law. So this is why this statement is more absurd than this. Okay, I cannot have increasing fiscal deficits because my law says I have to control it every year. Revenue deficit had to be brought down to, and fiscal deficit had to be controlled to 3%. अब normal year में बढ़ जाएगा because government का burden बढ़ रहा है. For example, 8 में fiscal deficit increased. In fact, we said FRBM अभी हम implement नहीं कर सकते. And then in pandemic also increased. 9% तक भी गया है. Because it was the burden on the government to increase the output in the economy. So answer here would be B. Without knowing numbers, you can solve all types of questions. Yes. Steadily increased. Steadily increased means 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If it goes from 6 to 5, it is not steady increase. In the last 5 years, has it increased steadily? Even after pandemic, this year the government said we have controlled significantly. 6% से कम आ रहे हैं हम. So it was 9 during pandemic and now it's 6. Can it be correct? FRBM बोल ही रहा है fiscal discipline. In fact, if you know this center-state relation, this problem that happened, Kerala government has filed a suit in the Supreme Court. What exactly is their contention? क्या बोला उन्होंने? हाँ, limit. So they are saying limit आप किस हिसाब से decide कर रहे हो? What is the basis of that limit? What you have decided? Limit करना है, but what is the basis of the limit? So when you say 3%, from where did this 3% come in? Why is it not 5%? Limit pe I can have number of debates, but the idea is everybody agrees that fiscal deficit is bad. So I have to control it. Steadily increase कैसे हो सकता है अगर control करना है? Is it clear? With reference to India's decision to levy an equalization tax of 6% on online advertisements, services offered by non-resident entities. This was introduced in the year 2016 as part of the budget. Any new taxation development that happened. This is called as equalization levy. Now, what is this equalization levy? A particular firm in India does business with a firm in US. There are some types of services you can do. For example, this firm is displaying an ad using the services of another firm in US, that is Google. Similarly, I can do another type of function, which is my e-commerce activities, business to business. Now, whatever the taxes India will apply, all of these services, whether it is ad or e-commerce, these services do not require them to open office here. Service trade ho sakta without opening an office. I can sell my services from this to this using digital means. Now, if they do not have any registered office here, this sale of service from firm A to firm B, how will I tax this? This becomes a problem because Google is operating certain services in India without having a commercial presence in India. And if they don't have a commercial presence in India, India cannot tax its activities. That means revenue is being generated from the country, but there is no tax being taken. This is why in the year 2016, we introduced something called as equalization levy or digital services tax. That if you have a firm operating anywhere in the world and you sell services to Indian people, Indian firms, you will have to pay this equalization levy. Only one type of service was covered in 2016, that was advertisement services. 2020 an amendment was made and e-commerce services were also added. This addition, when it was introduced for the first time, any new tax or any provision added as part of budget will be introduced as part of what? Budget has taxation provisions? Does the budget have taxation provisions? They're introduced as part of what? Through? नहीं, रेवेन्यू रिसीट तो होगा. बजट में जब एक्सपेंडिचर होता है, इट इज इंट्रोड्यूस एज पार्ट ऑफ द अप्रोप्रिएशन बिल. व्हाट इज द बिल बिहाइंड टैक्सेशन प्रिंसिपल्स? It's the finance bill. Finance bill will change anything tax. So 2006 budget, finance bill introduced this tax in the country. This happened as part of the budget, any new development in the year 2016. It was introduced as part of Income Tax Act. This is incorrect. Finance bill 2016 introduced this tax. Is the tax clear? Physical presence नहीं है, but activity है. तो अगर physical presence किसी firm की यहाँ पे होती and they would have given a service, they would be taxed. So we made this firm equal with this firm. This is why it is called as equalization levy. Made this firm equal with this firm. Equalization levy, digital services tax, or a Google tax. Infamously, it is called as the Google tax. Non-resident entities that offer ad services in India can claim a tax credit. This was given as a feature of this tax कि tax credit आपको नहीं मिलेगा. Now, what is a tax credit? If this firm is paying tax to the Indian government here, it should not pay a tax to its own government here. This is a tax credit. This law in India said, if you pay tax here, you are not going to get any tax credit. You can't claim any tax credit. अपने वहाँ profits पे आप अलग से tax दोगे. ये indirect tax हमने introduce किया है on your services. You won't claim any tax credit here. This was introduced as a feature of this equalization levy. The genesis of the question is introduction in the budget. The answer here is no tax credit and introduced as part of the Financial Bill 2017. This is equalization levy. This is what they said, this is a problem. OECD is trying to create conditions for this. The globe regulations, one is your minimum tax and the second is trying to capture this. Because number of firms are now offering services like this. FRBM. FRBM was passed in the year 2003. Now 2003 was a long time back. The government wanted to review whether FRBM is required or not, or any changes are required. For that, they created a FRBM review committee under the chairmanship of N.K. Singh in 2017. FRBM review committee, unki recommendations came out in 2017. Question came in 2018. It was a recent development with respect to deficits and debt. FRBM has recommended debt to GDP of 60%, comprising 40% for center and 20% for states. The central government domestic liabilities is 21% compared to 49% of state. Now read the two statements together. It is saying center government की liability 20 है, review committee is saying that center की 40 तक liability जा सकती है. And state government liability is 50%, but liability can go up to only. That means both the statements are incongruent. Someone having debt to GDP of 49 cannot have a target of 20, and someone having of 21 cannot have a target of. It's the opposite. So either this is correct or this is correct. Who is more expected to have a deficit, the center or the state? The center. So this statement is incorrect. This is the correct statement. As per Constitution of India, it is mandatory for a state to take central government consent for raising any loan. If the former owes any standing liabilities to the latter. This is what is the Kerala government suit in the Supreme Court. This is as per what article of Constitution? Article 293 clause 3. It says if the state has taken money from center, state cannot borrow without center's permission. So if central government consent is required, if you have taken loan from center, you cannot take loan until and unless you have taken permission. वहीं पे center limit लगाती है how much you can take. And can the state governments borrow from outside India? Yes or no? Where is it mentioned? Yes or no? How do you know? Yes, no तो आसान है ना भी बोलना. What is the basis? Can the state governments borrow directly from outside the country? Why no? Mentioned in Article 293 itself. Read clause 2 of Article 293. Why no? Otherwise, reason क्या हो सकता है? हाँ? Sovereignty. So how is sovereignty threatened? How is sovereignty threatened? The problem is, how will the liability be paid by a state government? Because all of the dollar is control of RBI, central bank. How will the state governments pay back the liability? The center has to give a guarantee as the state can pay. So ultimate guarantee external loan की center की बनती है. So we have on loans. So the center takes it on states' behalf and then forwards it to them. This is how it is done. You need states' permission. Otherwise, explicitly in Article 293 Clause 2 says states cannot borrow from outside. Center की permission के बाद ही ले सकता है. Sovereignty ये थोड़ी है state बेच देगी वो government. Can't do that. Which of the above items are exempted under GST? This was a fact-based question, any tax-based. Cereal grains hulled, chicken eggs cooked, fish processed and canned, and newspaper containing advertisement material. In fact, later they came out with a clarification whether newspapers containing ad would have GST or not. जब तक यूपीएससी ने पूछा था तब टैक्स नहीं था जीएसटी, बट क्लैरिफिकेशन में उस पर भी टैक्स है. Now what this is a fact based, you can't do anything here. These two are raw agriculture produced. Raw agriculture produced is exempt from GST. Fish processed can is processed. So this has GST. These two and the fourth one was that time was exempt from GST. This was a difficult question. Cooked, not processed. Most of India's external debt is owed by government entities. Is it owed by government? So I told you to read the debt profile. Every year there is a government report which mentions these all facts. In fact, government has the least amount of debt from external sources. It's roughly 19 to 20% of GDP. That's not very high. All of India's external debt is dominated in US dollars. It's not all. Maximum is in US dollars, but it is not all. So both the statement is incorrect. Most of the borrowings India has done from outside is external commercial borrowings. And government as a rule does not do commercial borrowings. They mostly take it from government. They do not take it from, in the market they have not taken it. In the context of Indian economy, non-financial debt includes which of the following? What do you mean by non-financial debt? Can a debt be non-financial? How can a debt be non-financial? Debt is something which you have to pay. How can you have a liability which is not in finance terms? That means you have liability in terms of real goods. Is it possible to have debt in real goods? This question was tricky in this way only. I told you there are three sectors. One is government, second is, and the third is, question is asking debt of non-financial sectors. Non-financial debt इनकी हो सकती है. Debt of non-financial sector is what non-financial debt they have asked. Housing loans owed by households. This is real sector. Household is real. Amounts outstanding on credit card. Again real. Households. Treasury bills. What are treasury bills? Issued by the government. So debt of government or debt of real sector. All of the three are correct. This is why I say this is tricky. They could have made it more clear, debt of non-financial sectors. फॉर एग्जाम्पल फाइनेंशियल सेक्टर में डेट किसकी हो सकती है? बैंक माइट बी डेटेड, म्यूचुअल फंड्स माइट बी डेटेड, एनीथिंग कैन बी डेटेड है. इनकी डेट नहीं लेनी है, इन दोनों की लेनी है. Credit card is a debt taken by whom? This is why I said nature of debt तो हमेशा ही financial होगा. So they could have made the statement more clear. There's a framing issue that was there in this question. Otherwise, housing loan, how are you going to pay? ये थोड़ी है कि मैं बेंच बना के दे दूंगा बैंक को to pay for my house. It will always be financial. They could have been more specific. Which of the following is likely to be the most inflationary in its effect? Repayment of public debt. This is a government expenditure. Aggregate demand will rise, demand pull inflation. Borrowing from public to finance a budget deficit. Borrowing from banks to finance a budget deficit. Both of them would be expenditure only. Again, the same thing here. Creation of new money to finance a budget deficit. Out of the four, these three would be inflationary. All of them would lead to demand pull inflation. But this is talking about demand could still be matched by supply. Inflation here would not be as significant as compared to quantity. This is the most inflationary when new money comes in. This can still be balanced by effective supply. This cannot. New money, quantity theory. So most inflationary has been asked, inflationary charo hai. The most inflationary is creation of new money. Because rest of the three is just cycling the money in the economy from one actor to another economic actor. A share of the household financial saving goes towards government borrowings. In any particular economy, who is responsible for savings? You have four major actors in any economy. One actor is household, another actor is firm, the third actor is, and fourth actor is rest of the world. Bank तो बस connect करता है इनको. Major actors तो ये bank are just financial intermediaries which connect the savers to investors. All of them auxiliary functions हैं financial sector के. Real यही तीनों हैं. यही तीन है according to the households outside also if the economy is open. Now out of the four, who does most of the expenditure? Investment expenditure and government consumption expenditure. But who does most of the savings? In any particular economy, their savings are what are used by them or them. Mostly savings यही करता है. So now if question is saying a share of household financial saving goes towards government borrowings. Government will eventually borrow from the savings which the household has done. And if the government borrows more, the firm does not get it. This is why it is crowding out. This is why deficit is bad. So this statement is just a very generic statement. Dated securities issued at market rates in auctions form a large component of internal debt. The government, in order to take the savings, they will issue what? Government security. Government security less than 1 year are called as? More than 1 year are called as? Now what is the purpose of taking money for less than 1 year? Temporary mismatches. I know that money will come after 2 months. Right now I don't have. So this is only temporary mismatches. If I need money for longer time duration, it would be when I have a structural problem in the economy, every year I have to borrow, and I have to borrow for either repayment of something where I don't know money will come back or not, or I will have to do it on development. Now out of this two, if government is always indebted, will take in T-bill form or dated form? If you don't know the fact, it will always be mostly this. Temporary mismatches में तो इतने पैसे नहीं लेंगे. Mostly developmental purposes or paying off the salaries, pensions, I will have to take it in the form of dated security. This is also correct. Otherwise, the source of this statement is again the debt profile report of the government. There you will get all types of information. कितने T-bills हैं, कितने dated हैं. Mostly more than 90 is dated only. Both 1 and 2 are correct. Is it clear? Looking the question looks tough, but if you read it is very basic question. Doesn't have any technicality involved. Which reference to the expenditure made by an organization or company, which of the following statement is correct? Acquiring new technologies, capital expenditure. Why? Asset creation, something which can be used again and again. If the company borrows a software, is it capital expenditure? Is it investment? Yes, software can be used again and again. This is why acquiring new technology is correct. Debt financing is considered capital expenditure, while equity financing is considered revenue expenditure. If I have to build an asset, in fact, this is wrong in many ways. If I need to build an asset and I don't have the money for it, I can take money by taking a liability, or I can take money by issuing share. I can take money by taking a liability, or I can give them ownership. This is how I can build the asset. Now, if I take a debt or change the ownership structure, both way there is an impact on asset or liability. यहाँ पे मेरा liability plus होगा और यहाँ पे मेरा asset minus होगा, right? Both ways it is capital. It is not revenue. So this statement, equity financing is revenue. This is incorrect. Is it clear? Also, equity financing or even debt financing, it's expenditure or receipt? It's a receipt. That way also it's incorrect. Debt financing is taking a liability. I'm taking in money. This is a capital receipt, not a capital expenditure. Also, asset reduction is capital receipt. Is it clear? Asset liability structure is being impacted. This is capital. Answer here is one only. Which one of the following situation best reflects indirect transfers often talked about in media recently with reference to India? Year is 2022. This term has been used since 2012. Indirect transfers. What is this idea? Anyone? 2012 में ये पहली बार हुआ था. प्रणब मुखर्जी, the finance minister. Is this term more relevant? Vodafone retrospective taxation. What was the case? What was the case? Vodafone hedged. कैसे? There was a company, Hutch in India. You and I in this beautiful world. He had the Hutch key. This was the telecom company, a UK company. Vodafone wanted to buy this. But the owner of Hutch company was in Cayman Islands called CGP Investment. So what Vodafone did was, Vodafone directly from CGP Investments bought the ownership of Hutch. So this transaction that happened is happening on the basis of an asset which is Indian. That means whatever this transaction happened, the tax should be paid in India. That time it was not done. So what Pranab Mukherjee did, he made a change and he said not just the future transactions, the previous transactions will also pay a tax in India if this indirect transfer has an asset which is India. So indirectly I borrowed the company by borrowing it from its parent company outside India. This is what was called as a indirect transfer. Why this question came in 2022? This happened in 12. Because retrospective taxation की जो demand थी, the government cancelled the demand. There were two famous cases. One was Vodafone and the other was Kane Energy. Kane Energy UK sold a part of its shares in Vedanta. Government took 10% of the shares because of this taxation. Because वो भी deal ऐसी outside हुई थी. Both of these companies in outside arbitration councils took India. और Kane Energy को तो एक they got a judgment also in their favor where the judgment said that you can buy Air India assets or you can sell off Air India assets outside India if you want to take this money back. तो अब इंडियन गवर्नमेंट के एसेट जो बाहर हैं यूके में या न्यूयॉर्क में उनको खरीद लो, उनको बेच दो अगर इंडियन गवर्नमेंट आपको पैसे नहीं देती. This was a major embarrassment for the government. This is why the government cancelled this retrospective demand. But this tax still stays. Future सारी transaction tax होंगी, पिछली demand cancel हुई है. So this retrospective effect of the rule has been cancelled. Future transactions still will have this tax. So if an indirect transfer happens in two countries, but the underlying asset is Indian, you will have to pay a tax in India. This was what the indirect transfer was. No, they had to pay to the government. They did not pay that. केन वाले केस में इन्होंने 10% उनका शेयर्स में ट्रांसफर में गवर्नमेंट ने पैसे रख लिए, तभी ये तो कुछ नहीं कर पा रहे थे. दे सेड वी डोंट हैव एनीथिंग टू पे. सो दे हैड अनदर इशू ऑल्सो विद रिस्पेक्ट टू द 2G 3G पेमेंट्स. सो गवर्नमेंट इज नाउ एक्वायर्ड 35% share in Vodafone. Right now, this is what happened. This happened 6 months back only. Government, since Vodafone could not pay, 35% shareholder is the government now. A foreign company transfers shares and such shares derive their substantial value from assets in India. Foreign company transfers its share to another company, but the share were deriving its value from an asset in India. This is what is an indirect transfer. So this is why reading the newspaper is very important for capturing these type of terms. This was very famous. This was not that famous. You read it from 2 newspapers, you will capture all such phrases. Indirect transfers. मतलब wrong तो कुछ नहीं था, asset तो Indian है. There was nothing wrong. The wrong was that if I made a transaction deal in 2006, then the tax did not exist. अगर tax होता तो मैं कुछ और करता. Nothing. The government said asset was Indian. So if any such future thing, so if I introduce a tax, it should be something in the future. How would if I do it in 2005? They did not know anything. They would not have made the transaction. They could have figured out what the tax would be. I did not get a chance. So they did not do anything wrong. This rule still exists. It is not on previous transaction, but prospective transactions में तो है ही. The tax still exists. There's nothing wrong because the asset is Indian. If I don't know if there's a rule and I do something, then how would you tell me कि you did something wrong? आप कल रूल बना के बोलो कि आपकी एक्टिविटी खराब थी, तो वो तो आपने कल बनाया ना. I did not know it that this would be wrong. You know, retrospective taxation is in news right now also. Again, the government, or not the government, the Supreme Court has now given a ruling which says retrospective tax. Where? In the mining judgment, the government said this rule, or Supreme Court said this rule will apply from when? 2 lakh crore ka is pe, the companies are saying that we will have a burden of 2 lakh crore rupees if this rule applies retrospectively. This is why the government, and this was a 9-bench judgment, 8-1, and the government has asked for a review. The request came on the same day when the Prime Minister visited the Chief Justice house. ये दोनों की timing बहुत same हो गई थी. They said in the review that the states have the power to tax the mining companies, and this taxation powers come from 1st June 2005 when the case was filed. तो तब से लेकर अब तक जितनी भी टैक्स डिमांड है वो कंपनीज को पे करनी पड़ेगी, वेदर द कंपनी इज प्राइवेट और पीएसयू. कोल इंडिया के पास सबसे ज्यादा टैक्स बर्डन आएगा. Consider the following. Horizontal devolution 15 Finance Commission. How many of the above criteria other than population, area and income distance? Every Finance Commission will have principles for states. What are those principles? Every Finance Commission to decide horizontal devolution will have certain principles based on which they will have certain indicators. What are the principles on which this money should be given within the states? Why population? Population का एक इंडिकेटर है. प्रिंसिपल क्या होने चाहिए? सो इफ यू आर वन ऑफ द मेंबर्स ऑफ फाइनेंस कमीशन, किस बेसिस पे स्टेट को पैसे दोगे? द फर्स्ट मेजर प्रिंसिपल इज नीड. इफ एनी पर्टिकुलर स्टेट हैज मोर एरिया, हैज अ मोर पॉपुलेशन, उनकी नीड ज्यादा है. These two indicators are mostly followed by every finance commission. Apart from that, why income? What is the principle of taxation money? Why does the government give levy a tax on someone? There's one feature of the tax that helps solve something. That is the principle of redistribution. That is principle of equity. Rich states को कम मिलेगा, poor states को ज़्यादा मिलेगा. And for equity, what indicator they use? Income distance. Most of them use the income distance. Rank all of the states in per capita income, and those who are the top will get less, those who are the bottom will get more. In fact, 15th Finance Commission said कि जो third state है, ये हमारा parameter है. इससे जितने नीचे जाओगे उतने ज़्यादा पैसे मिलेंगे. हरियाणा was the third state. Any idea which was the first and second? तमिलनाडु per capita income. तमिलनाडु की population भी तो इतनी ज़्यादा है. This was the third highest state in per capita income. One Sikkim, second Goa, third was Haryana, fourth was. Smaller states would have higher per capita income. Sikkim will definitely have. Goa will also have. Third was Haryana. Any idea which was the fourth? Kerala. Equity income distance was the distance from Haryana. And then any other? The third principle is performance. Karnataka government is talking right now on this. They are saying that all of the southern states should form a union because a lot of money under need has been given to poorer states, but they're not improving. So you should now give more benefit to performance, not on need. Because throughout these 75 years, higher tax paying states have contributed more but got less. But problem is not that this has happened. Problem is the higher tax money has been used, not been used for developmental purposes. So अब performance की भी बात होनी चाहिए. They want more under performance. For performance, 15th Finance Commission did two things. One was demographic performance and the other was how good they are in collecting tax. Why demographic performance? This was introduced for the first time. Why? In सबका logic अगर समझो तभी you will learn. Otherwise, if you to remember everything, this will become a very difficult exercise. Why demographic performance? That means those who have controlled their population better. What the controversy was in terms of reference. Terms of reference said population should not be on 1971 census, which was used by the previous Finance Commission. It should be 2011. Southern states started complaining that our population has been controlled effectively. So if you shift from this to this, our money under need parameter will be less. So the Finance Commission found out another that those who have controlled population better, under performance, they'll get more. Finally, the fourth factor is what? Environment. Environment is the factor called fiscal disability. That states have more forest area. If they have more forest area, they are compromised on development. So forest cover and ecology was introduced, I think, by 13th Finance Commission for the first time. Every Finance Commission has continued. तो ये factor indicators change हो सकते हैं, principle यही चार रहेंगे. Need, equity, performance and fiscal disability faced. 15th Finance Commission had demographic performance, had forest and ecology, no reforms, stable government, no tax and fiscal effort. Is it clear? Otherwise also you can solve. Stable government cannot be a factor. Stable government is mostly political. और unstable करने वाले factors भी शायद center state के बीच में ही हों. So that cannot be a factor. And also reforms cannot be a factor. Why? Not subjective. Reforms means accepting one set of ideas which are going to bring the reform. Reforms could be multiple. Every state has its own political ideology to represent a particular reform. तो ये बहुत ज़्यादा political होगा. Reform इसलिए reform linked grants हैं, horizontal devolution reforms nahi hai. In fact, reform links grants also the states have a problem. That why are you linking it to reforms? You are asking us to move in one direction only, where we can have multiple directions to reform any particular thing. Answer here is 3. 1, 2 and 5. Only 3. Is it clear? These 4 principles will help you learn everything. Next, 16th Finance Commission also the same principles. Consider the investments in following assets. How many of the above are considered intangible investment? What's the difference between tangible and intangible? Tangible is something which can be touched and felt. Brand recognition. Is it tangible, intangible? Intangible. And why is it an investment? It will help increase revenue. How? So if Pepsi has a particular brand or Coke has a brand or Nike has the tick brand recognition, benefit क्या मिलता है उससे? You can sell more because it saves a lot of time and effort for the people who are coming to buy a particular product. Whenever you buy a product, for example, shoes, you might be lost. बहुत सारे shoes, बहुत सारी quality, बहुत price. This is why it's always a difficulty to make a decision in a flea market. You go to Sarojini Nagar, go to Karol Bagh, you would never know what the right price is. आप 100 रुपए की भी शर्ट ले आओ, वो भी लगेगा महंगी ले आए. Because you don't know the quality, you don't know the price. The moment it is brand, the same shirt would have costed 10,000, you still buy it. Because it has saved a lot of your time and effort and has built a trust with the particular brand. This is where the most important thing is brand recognition. Flea market is very difficult to decide because you don't have brand recognition. Inventory, tangible. It's the surplus kept. Intellectual property, intangible. Mailing list of clients, intangible. Mailing list is also again improving the business, intangible investment. What would be inventory otherwise? Intellectual property I've given out. Inventory तो वो मेरी intellectual property है ना, license. How will you have an inventory of services? What? सॉफ्टवेयर लाइसेंस बना दिया, वो सॉफ्टवेयर लाइसेंस किसको दूं? मेरी इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी है. माइक्रोसॉफ्ट ने एक लाइसेंस बना दिया टू यूज एक्सेल, दैट्स माई इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी. 10 कंपनीज have bought it, I got the revenue, that's my intellectual property. This is why I'm asking you the question, what type of service you can have in inventory? License is an intellectual property, I'm not considering it. तो उसका definition intellectual property है. How is a license inventory? नहीं, हाँ bitcoins बताओ. हाँ, Bitcoin is not a particular asset, is not an investment. Bitcoin only represents value. Digital inventory of what? This is the question. एक लिस्ट बना के नाम लिख दे, आप बोल रहे हो वो कंपनी की इन्वेंट्री है. That would be defined like this. सर्विस तो आप स्टोर थोड़ी कर सकते हो. You cannot store a service. Even professional services, lawyers and everything, you can't store anything. Not scalability. I'm saying on the basis of if I can keep something which I've not used, not sold. I created something, I brought raw material, but I could not sell it. That is inventory. The stock of surplus is inventory. What is the surplus in service? This is the question, how? What you are saying is एक कुक ने 10 लोगों का खाना बना दिया, 4 का ही बेचा, तो उसकी सर्विस तो 10 में लग गई. The 6 food items is what was left. You find it, there is no example of that. वो तो जबरदस्ती कुछ थोड़ी गलत करना है. External sector, another important from apart from money and banking. What are the topics covered in external sector? Money, banking में सबसे ज़्यादा question comes from external sector. Now external sector also covers few dimensions. This part of the paper has become more interesting to prepare for now. One is interaction with rest of the world, exchange कैसे होता है, exchange rate, and the other is understanding the dynamics of both. ये basic है, that comes from the macroeconomics NCERT of class 12th. Most questions from 2012 are on these two only. Sorry. The second most asked topic from external sector is trade. One of the components of balance of payment, that is trade. This you can have various goods and services trade. What is the percentage of import and export in India? Which of the most agriculture exports imported item? All of those factual information on trade and goods. And also you can have agreements on trade. Mostly new developments. Then you have another type of questions that is on institutions. Now this too is conventional. This is sometimes this is something you will always prepare. यहाँ पे unconventional चीजें हो रही हैं in the last 2 to 3 years. Though UPSC did this as a bouncer in 2015-16, but now they have made it regular. Last 2 years we have seen this trend. Now institutions and their publications which were covered, we had 3 major institutions which were repeatedly coming in the exam. World Bank and IMF, both structure, function, and publications. This was the domain. Publications used to come from other institutions also, such as World Economic Forum, but were very limited. World Bank, IMF were majorly covered. Another institution that was covered in detail was WTO. Maximum number of questions coming from multilateral trade, WTO. Here, organizational structure, the various agreements of WTO. Highly detailed questions have come from the agreements of WTO. Now this used to be the domain from 2014 to 2022. Now what they have done is, they're not sticking to these 3 institutions. अब problem यही है, इनके questions खत्म हो गए. I've watched everything. Now I can only repeat these questions. Or if any new development happens with respect to this, then I can ask. Otherwise, if no new development has happened, I've already exhausted most of it. Even if you see in mains, WT related questions have been asked multiple times. Now what they're doing is, they're asking questions on institutions, but there's no specific direction in which they're asking the questions on institutions. So what exactly is the lead which we can follow? We can follow the issues and then see what exactly are the institutions on these issues. So issue-based institutions have been asked. How? There is one particular issue that has become problem for most countries, is problem of debt. Too much debt being taken by number of countries, and the debt has become unsustainable. So Europe might have a program for sustainability of debt. US might have a program with its allies on sustainability of debt. Another issue which they cover here is climate change. Another third type of issue is any new technology transfer, technology sharing. Fourth, currency or money matters. So now these four issues, and if you see, you'll have to Google or you'll have to catch from the newspaper that these four issues are being covered on the multilateral end. If G20 talks about these issues, you need to prepare that particular, whatever the G20 agenda or whatever the G20 has brought in on these issues. So now anything would be dependent on the issues to be covered and not particular institutions. Previously, these three institutions were the most covered institutions in the external sector. Now issue-based institutions have to be covered. So issue say, you'll have to search that if there is a European Union mechanism on debt, anything on climate change, financing of new technology, sharing of new technology with respect to any new matter that is coming in, currency or thing. You can also talk about industrial policy here. For example, India is betting heavily on semiconductors. Semiconductors, world over, everyone is betting heavily on semiconductors. Quad has a semiconductor planning for all the 4 countries. वहाँ पे technology share and everything. तो issue से ही वो institution prepare होगा. You can't prepare any institution without any issue. So any new raging issue in the news that has been covered, you will have to find out any institutional mechanism for covering that particular issue. We'll see as a number of examples which they've asked in the last 2 years on this end. This is the new thing which has happened in the last 2 years. Sorry, this used to happen before also. In 15 they've asked a question, in 17 they've asked a question. There was just one-off question, which was very difficult to capture. But now this is neglected. This is what is focused on. But it's an important part because publications भी कम हो गई हैं. They don't ask reports anymore. They ask about this only. I'll show you with examples how it is being done. These two are the most conventional areas. This is something where you'll have questions every year because trade, you can ask anything. For example, this year they asked that what exactly is the percentage of India's services trade as a percentage of global trade. So you have number of things which you can explore in trade along with the agreements in trade. This is an ever evolving area. For example, last year itself, India has signed agreement with 3 countries with respect to trade. What are those 3 countries? One is UAE, other is Australia. Any else? Anyone else? जहाँ पर agreement sign हुआ था, then they stopped the negotiation. Canada. They started the negotiations, but they stopped it because of a lot of geopolitical reasons. Which of the following issues the global economic prospects? So 15 onwards, you'll find number of report and publications of institutions. Global economic prospects. ADB, European Bank, US Federal Reserve Bank, and World Bank. And most of the publications you'll find is either from World Bank or is from the IMF. Global economic prospects is a publication of World Bank. The terms agreement on agriculture, agreement on application of sanitary and phytosanitary measure, and peace clause appear in the news frequently in the context of the affairs of FAO, United Nations Framework Conference on Climate Change, World Trade Organization, UNEP. What is agreement on agriculture? What is agreement on agriculture? How much subsidy? Anything else? This agreement on agriculture was a 15 marker question this year in mains. This year means 2023, not 24, last year. WTO. What does the WTO do? Free and fair trade. Rules-based order for multilateral trade, not bilateral or regional trade. Multilateral, that means all of the member nations which are part of it. Rules-based order for that trade. It has three foundational agreements. One is General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, Agreement on Trade in Services, and TRIPS. WTO is formed in what year? 1940? 44? 91, sorry. 1986 में नेगोशिएशन स्टार्ट हुई थी, 94 में फाइनलाइज हुआ था, 95 में एस्टैब्लिश हुआ है. 8th round of negotiation of GATT, that was the Uruguay round, 86 to 94. Marrakesh Agreement, WTO is formed. Sorry. Why WTO was formed? Bretton Woods institution दो थे, IMF and World Bank, and the third one was also announced, that was International Trade Organization. This never happened. So what happened if this did not happen? A group of 23 countries came together under the aegis of a legal agreement called GATT. This happened in 1947. So there was a legal agreement in place with few member nations. The member nations increased, but there was no institutional structure. What was realized that this legal agreement is not very effective and we need an institution if there are conflicts. This is why WTO came in. And when the negotiation happened, this GATT 1947 was replaced by a new GATT passed in 94. Two new areas added, trade and services and intellectual property rights. These two things did not exist when trade happened in this time. This is also why GATT was required. As part of GATT, a new foundational agreements also came in. For example, one of the agreement was agreement on agriculture. पिछले GATT में agriculture trade नहीं बढ़ रहा था. They introduced a new agreement on agriculture. They introduced an agreement on sanitary and phytosanitary measures. They introduced an agreement on investment measures, TRIMS. Also, GATTs and TRIPS had their own schedules for whatever was negotiated in the 1986 round. All of this happened under WTO. Agreement on agriculture mein, what is happening in agreement on agriculture? Sorry. Subsidies. Anything apart from subsidy? First, agreement on agriculture wanted to improve the market access of agriculture goods throughout the world. It wanted to remove the trade and not remove, but reduce or rationalize it. Second was support to the farmers, subsidies, and the third was subsidies given for export. The three broader things under agreement on agriculture. Market access, domestic support, and export subsidies. This is where India has a problem. Domestic support. So WTO said that government can support the farmers, but what type of support will be allowed and what not will be allowed, यहाँ पे rule होगा. What is allowed is mentioned under. Not allowed is not allowed, as in it is allowed, but there's a limit, de minimis level, and then there's a blue box, something which should be a part of AMBER, but since it does not limit production, it is part of the blue box. What is the peace clause here? Under AMBER box, every country has a limit what support they can give. If it is a developing country, support limit is, and if it is a developed country, it is 5%. Now, India introduced something called as NFSA, which had a very big implication on MSP. When India introduced NFSA in 2013, we decided we are going to distribute free food to 80 crore people, 67% of the population. In order to give free food to 80 crore, you also have to collect that food. And the collection policy for the government is MSP. Procurement is MSP, distribution is PDS. If I collect so much of this under MSP, I might breach the 10% level. So a compromise was reached in 2013. This was called as the Bali Peace Clause. That India might breach 10%. In exchange, what did India agree to? Yes, in exchange, India agreed to sign the Trade Facilitation Agreement. UPSC asked a 3-statement question on DFA, and that was a very difficult question. All of these things are linked. So if you read WTO in detail, you'll find all of the questions will be solved from this. So agreement on agriculture, application of sanitary, phytosanitary and peace clause are matters of WTO. So you'll see how the difficulty level of questions will increase. यहाँ तो बहुत basic चीज पूछी. आगे ये TFA के भी features बहुत detail में जाएंगे. They will also go in detail with the trims feature. All of this they have done in the previous years. Very easy questions in the initial years. Convertibility of rupee implies. What is convertibility? And what do we mean by current account convertibility or capital account convertibility? No, that is the difference. Convertibility का क्या मतलब है? Any interaction with rest of the world is recorded on balance of payment account. One part of balance of payment account is which records the current transactions and the other records the long-term transactions impacting asset and liability capital. What I mean by convertibility is, in order to do any of these transactions, I will have to convert my rupee into any foreign currency for transactions, or dollar has to be converted at rupee. And this conversion should not happen at government rates. It should happen at market rate. The conversion which I allow of home currency into outside country, or the vice versa at market exchange rate, this is what is called as convertibility. And what I mean by current account and capital account convertibility is, this convertibility is fully allowed on current account. That means whatever activities are recorded in the current account, उन activities के लिए you can convert any amount without a limit. But when I say India has partial convertibility or no full convertibility on capital account, that means in order to do this conversion, there are certain limits. There are regulations. And all of this is not absolute. When I say convertible, that means all of it is allowed until expressly not allowed. तो यहाँ पे सारी एक्टिविटीज अलाउड है जब तक हम 3-4 लिस्ट की नेगेटिव लिस्ट नहीं बनाए कि यहाँ अलाउड नहीं है. यहाँ नथिंग इज अलाउड until unless I approve it. This is what is convertibility. Freely permitting the conversion of rupee to other currencies and vice versa. Current account means for these activities. Capital account convertibility means for activities recorded under capital account. Is it clear? India does not have full convertibility on capital. India has full convertibility on. When did this happen? After 91 in 2015. Why not? 91 से 24 सारे years है. 15 तो special है, 14 में independence मिली थी. The person who made this statement is a member of parliament today. शायद ये वीडियो देख के हमें मिल जाए कुछ. When did this happen? This happened in 94 when India shifted to market exchange rate in 93. From 91 to 93, India had a system of exchange rate which was called as liberalized exchange rate management system. Before 91, India had fixed exchange. In 93 में हम जैसे ही market exchange rate किया, हमने 94 में current account convertibility allow कर दी. Basel III Accord, or simply Basel III, often seen in the news, seeks to. This we discussed in the last class. What are Basel norms? Capital norms. Capital norms is one part of Basel norms. What exactly is the idea of Basel norms? It comes from Bureau of International Standards. Members are who? Central bank governors, central banks of countries. इनका एक Basel committee on banking supervision है जो Basel norms देता है. Basel norms for what? This is for banking regulation, prudential norms for banking, so that people don't lose trust in banking. One of the ways of doing it was the capital norms, capital adequacy ratio. There are a number of other things in Basel. So Basel I only had capital. Basel II moved beyond capital. Basel III has much more features as compared to capital because Basel III happened after 2008 crisis. 2008 financial crisis was mostly in the banking and the related sector. Financial sector में था. This is why Basel III adopted significant reforms in this because they believed हमने जो पहली दो चीजें की उससे तो the crisis did not stop. So we need more effective regulation. It is to improve banking sector ability, economic stress, improve risk management. Regulations because risk. Why they have risk? Because they give out loans, significant risk involved. Answer is 2. Initially, a very simple question they've asked. वो जो simple खत्म हो गया, the difficulty level increased. This is why you'll find 2014, 15, 16, the cutoff was very high. 107, 116 in 2016. 2015 was 107. Then 2016, 116 कम हुआ 104 पे आया 2017. Then beyond that, when the easy questions got exhausted, you will find no year where you will find cutoff beyond 100. The difficulty level of options increased so much that cutoff was 85 last year. This year also it is somewhere around 90, 95, 75. So you see the cutoff because difficulty, अब आसान question खत्म हो गए हैं. So this is why the difficulty is improving. And if the paper is evolving so much, you also have to evolve your strategy. You can't just have a fixed strategy कि 2015-16 में तो लक्ष्मीकांत से हो जाता था और sources from economics. You won't have the same again. So that year, the World Bank, IMF, WTO questions were asked. Now issue-based institution questions are asked. You can't just read WTO in detail and expect that वो questions भी हो जाएंगे. You'll have to evolve your strategy because the exam is evolving. Problem of international liquidity is related to non-availability of goods and services, gold and silver, dollar and other hard currencies, or exportable surplus. What do you mean by liquidity? Convert to cash. Something that can be converted to cash is liquidity. What do we mean by any particular asset being a liquid asset? What is a liquid asset? This asset which can be used in exchange without loss of any asset which helps me conduct the exchanges without loss of value and time. This is why money is the most liquid asset of an economy, because cash can be used for exchange without loss of value and time. Gold, real estate, all of those are less liquid assets because either the value will erode or you'll take time to convert it. This is what is liquidity. Now, liquidity is to conduct exchange, right? International exchanges happen in what form? In what asset? Dollars. Why dollar? Most reliable. Why is it most reliable? For any international exchange to happen, people who are involved in exchange should trust. And in order to have trust, you need to have stability. The currencies which are mostly stable are what are called as hard currencies. Dollar is one of the hard currency. How did dollar get this stability and trust? Evolution of Bretton Woods. So US ने कहा मान लिया. So why were they giving loans? And they were giving loans because they wanted everyone to use dollar. Yes, 1944 से लेकर 1971 तक we had the gold standard system where value of dollar was linked to gold. So significant period of time, this link was there which created trust. And US, the monetary system, tried to create stability through this. उनकी economy ही destabilize हो गई तब ये link टूटा. But till that time, most of the global commodities were being priced in dollars. In fact, the wars that happened, the Yom Kippur War after 71, that happened in 73, that could have reduced the dollar's relevance if Saudi Arabia could have moved beyond a dollar to price the oil in dollars. अगर वो हो जाता, this link would have been broken. In fact, if you see right now, China is trying to do the same. The whole influence of China through One Belt, One Road is not to develop countries. It wants to spread the yuan everywhere so that it is used in transactions and not in dollars. So the whole concept of de-dollarization that has happened in the last 3-4 years is that dollar is not stable as it was earlier publicized. There are a number of other currencies which can replace this. BRICS is also, all of these countries together wanted their own currency to replace the dominance of dollar. Now what's the benefit of having this currency as the global currency for US? Every other country has to earn dollar in order to spread it, to use it. This, they don't have to, they can print. Secondly, any debt which US raises from outside countries, it is going to come at very substantially low interest rate. Why? Because everybody wants US dollar or US assets, that is the US government security. So वो जब borrow करेंगे US government security से outside, they're going to get it at lowest interest rate. Why? Because everybody demands that. Because everybody needs dollar or dollar-backed assets. This is what the benefit is. Dollar and other hard currencies.
Completing the syllabus without proper knowledge of current affairs will not take you far in the UPSC Civil Services examination. Regulate and transform your preparation with complete coverage of news of relevance. Get a concrete hold of current affairs for UPSC CSE with Vision IS Monthly Current Affairs Revision Program starting from 20th September at 5 p.m. The program is your guide to get comprehensive news on one platform sourced through relevant resources such as The Hindu, Indian Express, Economic Times, PIB, Yojana and others. Enroll for complete coverage of current affairs including Indian polity and constitution, economy, international relations and more. Comprehensive assessment of preparation through MCQs and mains-oriented questions. Expert support through personalized mentoring and online doubt resolution.
European stability mechanism. Now, this is what I was talking about. That institution-based questions, one of they used to ask before. This is a completely issue-based question. A particular issue, and on that issue you have an institution or a particular policy mechanism. The issue that was happening during this time, so there was a crisis in Europe in 2012. What was it related to? The Eurozone crisis. 2008 was the US financial crisis, global financial crisis. 2012 was the Eurozone crisis. The Eurozone crisis was that Greece was refusing to pay its debt. All of the European countries have a common currency, but fiscal policy is not common. तो उन्होंने डेट बहुत ज़्यादा ले ली because they had their own policy on budget. They were refusing to do so. So this was spreading to other countries also. For example, Portugal. They were also saying that we will not repay the debt just like Greece is. All of these were destabilized because they had taken significant amount of debt. In order to stabilize these countries, we had the European Stability Mechanism. This was financial assistance to Eurozone countries. Issue se hi wo you can capture this. You can't capture the institutions or mechanisms like this. If there is any particular, for example, debt has again become a problem now. So debt related any global mechanisms, you can have a question on that. For example, in 22, I think they asked the G20 common framework. That G20 common framework was after pandemic, number of low or least developed countries are not able to repay their debt. So unki debt restructure karenge. So again, the issue was unsustainability of debt. Stability mechanism is somewhat on that front. In context of which of the following do you sometimes find the terms amber box, blue box and green box? This we just discussed. This is part of WTO Agreement on Agriculture. 2016 is a year where they asked direct questions. You can see amber box, this SDR. This is why the cutoff was 116. The paper was very easy. Everybody scored 150. Which of the following currencies has been proposed to be added to the basket of IMF SDR? What is IMF SDR? It's a currency. Is it a currency? It's not a currency. It's not a liability of the IMF. You can't claim anything from the IMF. SDR is, what is SDR? It's an international reserve asset. When was introduced? Any idea? Problem that happened was, if two countries want to trade with each other, what currency are they going to trade in? Dollar is what is the most acceptable. What if this A country wants to buy something from B, but B is asking for dollar, A does not have dollar? This can be a problem. So IMF said, जितने भी member हैं, उनको हम एक asset देंगे, which is SDR. A has SDR. A can use this SDR to exchange it with C, with dollar, and then use this dollar for this transaction. This is what is the significance of SDR. So I introduced a new asset which are distributed to everyone. They can use this to get any currency. This currency can be then used for whatever you want it to. This is the significance of special drawing rights. Now, if I've created some asset to perform a function, from where does the value of this SDR comes in? I have to decide value. How will I decide the value? I chose a basket of currency, and what is their daily value is what I calculate. Before that currency, I also assigned certain weights. हर currency का normal average नहीं है. I will to some currency I'll give more weight. For example, dollar has more weight. Why does dollar have more weight, or what is the significance? How do I assign weight? Is it quota based? Quota based तो आपको SDR मिलेगा. Which country gets how much SDR is based on their quota. But how will I assign weight to a currency? How much transactions? One, what is its use in trade? What is the openness of a particular currency? And what is its level of convertibility? ये दो factors के basis पे ही हमने weights assign किया और वो currency भी choose की. In 2016, this basket had one more currency added to it. It was yuan, Chinese yuan. The currency name is renminbi. Unit का नाम is yuan. This is the currency which was added. Which were the earlier 5 currencies? US dollar, pound, pound sterling, euro, yen. These 4, renminbi added 5. I think there was another apart from these 4. No, Russia. No. US dominated system, why will they give it to Russia? US dominated system don't have. There's one more, I think. Can't recall. China, I think then 5th is China only. These were the 5. They have weights assigned. Is it clear what is SDR and weightage? And also currencies. What is the difference between their GDP? You see the trade profile. China is producing all of the goods which the world wants. Low-end manufacturing, China has a dominance. What does US or India has a dominance in? It has a dominance in services. But that is limited to only few markets. It's not selling everywhere. Mostly US market only. With reference to International Monetary and Financial Committee, consider the following statements. This is a subcommittee of the IMF. So I told you initial years, IMF, World Bank and WTO matters are what are covered in detail. IMFC discusses matters of concern affecting global economy and advises the International Monetary Fund on its direction of work. This is exactly the function of IMFC. World Bank participates as an observer in IMFC meetings. Is there any relation between World Bank and IMF? No World Bank. World Bank cannot give loan to any country until unless you are a part of IMF. Why? Why? दोनों bodies linked हैं. What was the reason of being? And this is why you can, if you know the genesis, you can solve this question the second. It acts as observer. These two bodies are linked. Both of the statements are correct. What is the reason for IMF? What is the function of World Bank? Basics जब तक नहीं होंगे ये analytical or applied questions solve नहीं होंगे because you can't prepare all bodies. This is something you can't do. So you have to apply your mind and then take a risk here. World Bank का genesis was that the World Bank provides money for development, right? It can provide money directly for development. It's a developmental financial institution. There are 2 bodies which provide direct loans. One is International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and the other is International Development Agency. This provides to developing and least developed. This only provides to least developed. Developed world को कोई loan नहीं मिलता World Bank से. Apart from that, World Bank has other bodies also. IFC. Why IFC? International Financial Corporation. Why IFC? ये दोनों तो government, mostly government bodies को loan देता है. To give loans to private sector, right? Now, if World Bank is saying India is less developed, my 2 bodies can give loans to India, that is IBRD and IDA. But FDI also should come in India. I should help provide firm loans through FDI and also loans directly. Uske liye body that is going to help is IFC. Now this FDI needs certain guarantees that the money can be taken back, because the money coming from outside is going to come in the form of India should have the ability to service the loan. How will it service the loan? If India loses all of its dollars, how will India be able to service the loan? This is where you need the membership of. Whenever any country faces an external crisis where it cannot pay for its imports or cannot service its debt, it gets help from. इसीलिए IMF important है, क्योंकि वर्ल्ड बैंक का जो पैसा आ रहा है डायरेक्ट पैसे में तो still they can find a way, but indirectly if they are getting this money, other bodies also they have formed, guarantee agency and court for settlement, center for settling investment disputes. So if they're helping you get money from other sources, you need to find a way to pay back also. This is why you need to be a member of IMF. These two bodies are linked together. World Bank participates as observer in IMF security. So if you know there's a particular link, this can be done. Sorry, which one? This body is not. Why? Because the government of India does not want to cede its sovereignty on disputes. हम किसी और की बात क्यों माने? Resources के लिए इसलिए हमने बोला we have a bilateral investment treaty which will decide how our disputes will be solved. Why should I accept someone else's sovereignty over my issues? Because this will then dictate a lot of investment decisions in my country. I don't want to give that space to any country. This is why India is not part of this. Arbitration में India बहुत जगह नहीं मानता बात. It goes through its own bilateral investment treaties, what they have created. If you're not part, no, the thing is all of this money, what is the role of World Bank? The genesis of World Bank is that this country is poor, who is going to give loan to them? World Bank कैसे लोन देगा? World Bank भी तो मार्केट से पैसे लेता है. From where does it get the money? It takes money from the market, issues some bonds, and then gives it to these countries. What if these countries do not pay them back? I have to have some guarantee of international liquidity. This is why that international liquidity would be solved through IMF. तभी दोनों का, it's a function which is in consonance. Developmental money, international liquidity, financial stability. So Sri Lanka is not able to pay. They are now deciding what the conditions of loan would be. Pakistan is not able to pay, conditions of loan. IMF, why does the IMF set conditions? Why? The whole issue is that IMF will only solve your temporary liquidity. हम बार बार आपको थोड़ी डॉलर देते रहेंगे. You will have to solve that and you will have to make structural changes. So those structural changes is what becomes problematic for the countries. 1966-67, when India took money from IMF, we did not follow up the structure. This is why the second, third tranches of loan never turned up. And IMF asked India to devalue its currency. It became very negative because we devalued the currency by 37%. 67, Indira Gandhi government devalued it by 37%, but the complete money did not come in. This is why every year onwards, devaluation became highly political कि ये नहीं करेंगे हम. 91 में also when it happened, when India got a loan from IMF, India had to devalue its currency. That was the first condition. And we devalued it by 20% without telling it to anyone. Only the Prime Minister, Finance Minister and the RBI Governor, only 3 people knew that devaluation is going to happen. And when the first announcement of devaluation happened of 8%, there was a no confidence motion against the government. The government survived because both the left and the right were against the government. Left decided कि हम BJP के साथ वोट नहीं करेंगे. That would be a bigger problem, so they walked out. The government saved. All of this devaluation linked every problem started with IMF. Both are correct. If they decide to, तो डॉलर का करेंगे क्या? Still क्या? I took certain currency which is of no value and I've closed myself. Do you think any country can survive without any global trade today or technology? Which of the following best describes the term import cover? What is import cover? This is also news, every time covered in the news. Why does any country want to have foreign exchange reserve? Any country has reserves of foreign exchange. Who maintains these reserves? RBI. RBI maintains these foreign exchange reserves. What is the use of this foreign exchange reserve? Do you think RBI pays for the imports? Then? Do you think reserves are used for paying of the imports? फिर तो वो यूज ही हो रहा है. रिजर्व कैसे हुए? One is RBI can intervene in the exchange rate market to have any stability here. We have a floating exchange rate, so I can intervene whenever I think the rate is going too bad. For example, 75 say 95 will be a problem, so I'll try to make it till 80, 85. I'll sell, buy dollars. This is what exchange rate market interventions. How will I make interventions if I don't have reserves? This is one reason. The second is, if any country wants to do business with you, they need to have an idea whether you can pay the money or not. For example, whenever you buy imports or you take a debt from outside, the market needs to have a confidence that you will be able to pay. The market needs to have a confidence that you'll always have dollar. Reserves provide this confidence. These are the two reasons why any country builds up the reserves, so that its international business does not stop. Other countries have a confidence they will be able to cover up, and they can also intervene in the exchange rate market. Now, when we say that they have a use, that means for confidence. Now, if I want to keep certain money for confidence, I also need to decide how much foreign exchange reserves I should have. Because if you go in further detail, for maintaining reserves, any country has to pay. There is a cost of maintaining reserves. Now, when there's a cost involved in maintaining reserves, I need to decide how much maximum I should have. Now, what should be the maximum? This is where the import cover comes in. One of the globally accepted definition is that if a country has an import cover of 3 months, that means if their foreign exchange reserves are enough to buy imports for 3 months, that means they are safe. कि अगर आज earning stop हो जाए, I will be able to buy all of my imports for 3 months from the reserves I have. This is what is the significance of import cover. During 91, India was left with an import cover of only 2 weeks. It substantially fell from 3 months to some 9 to 10 weeks and came out within a period of 1 week or 1 month. It came out to only 1 week or 2 weeks of foreign exchange reserves. वो खत्म हो जाते, India would have to default. But India never defaulted. उससे पहले हमने gold mortgage कर दिया था अपना. This is what is the significance of import cover. How much of your imports can be bought by the foreign exchange reserves? Number of months of imports that could be paid by a country's international reserves. This is also a term you'll find in the news. This question, I think in 2016, last year itself, 2021 economic survey discussed this concept in detail. They discussed this issue कि use अगर इतना है तो ये कितना, how much should be there. So they gave out 3-4 formulas how exactly how much you can calculate. They discussed this issue in detail in 3 pages in a box. The adequacy of foreign exchange reserves. Right now, what is the import cover of India? 10 to 11 months. Yes. Is it clear, import cover? This is a term usually comes in the news. यार ये समझाना टाइम लगेगा. मैं कैसे बनाऊंगा for this import cover? How will I build the reserves? Wait, I'll explain later. It has to go in some detail. India's ranking in ease of doing business index is sometimes seen in the news. Which of the following has declared that ranking? Ease of doing business is quite famous. It was World Bank. Why did they ask this year 2016? The moment the new government came in power in 2014, they said Indian government has a lot of problem with regulations. So we need to improve the regulatory business. How will you do that? The government itself gave certain power to 10 different ministries which were tackling 10 indicators of ease of doing business. Okay? अब सबको एक टारगेट दिया कि आपको improve करना है. And within a period of 3 years, 2016 to 19, India jumped in the rankings from 144 to 66. Because each ministry was given a target on the 10 indicators. UPSC first asked whose publication, then they asked what are the 10 indicators also. They asked both because the Indian government was targeting all. This happened till 2019. 2019, the whole report came under certain controversy. 2020, the whole index was banned. 2020, this publication was stopped. Lot in news because the government of India had a lot to do with it. This is World Trade Organization. Similarly, they've asked on other indices also. One of the years they asked on the Global Hunger Index also. So these global indices and publications have been covered in the news or have been covered in the paper. Global Financial Stability Report is prepared by IMF, World Bank, and World Economic Forum. These 3 bodies have been covered multiple times. It's the IMF. The global infrastructure facility is, now this is the type of thing I was talking about, issue-based question. One issue-based I gave you in a European stability mechanism. This was issue-based in form of development of infrastructure. ASEAN initiative to upgrade infrastructure, World Bank collaboration for PPP, collaboration amongst major banks and UNCTAD funded initiative. This is World Bank PPP collaboration, the global infrastructure facility. So the issue is development of infrastructure, and this is one of the facility in order to do that. This is how issue based you can solve institution question. This was a difficult question that year. Broad-based trade and investment agreement is sometimes seen in the news in the context of negotiations between India and one of the things are the trade agreements. Trade agreements which countries sign amongst each other or amongst a group, these are called as regional trade agreements. Now, what these agreements cover is every country has some sort of barriers to trade. When they sign a regional trade agreement, they're trying to reduce the barriers. India is negotiating such agreements with a number of countries which are repeated in news. This agreement, Broad-Based Trade and Investment Treaty, was part of India's agreement with European Union. So you'll find a number of these regional trade agreements और इनके specific नाम हैं. Generally, they are all called as free trade agreements. India has certain variants of FTAs called as Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement and Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. For example, with UAE, it has signed a partnership. In sabke, there are specific names. These are generic names. For example, India's BTIA is a FTA with EU. So you'll find FTA references, but all of these have a specific name also. For example, with Canada, it's a specific name. With these Australia, it has a specific name. I think with EFTA countries also India has signed. जो Eastern Russia में 4 countries, उनके साथ भी India has signed one agreement. All of these agreements have a specific name which you have to remember because UPSC is asked such type of questions. This BTIA is with European Union. This is in news since 2012. Because these negotiations of relaxing the barriers take a lot of time. They're highly political. The TFA. India has ratified to TFA agreement of WTO. This is what I told you. Peace clause sign hua. India had to ratify TFA. TFA is part of Bali's ministerial package. It was part of developed countries got TFA. Developing countries got a peace clause. It came into force in January 2016. This was the difficult part. So agreements, they've asked in quite detail. It was not 2016 January, it was in 2017. In fact, 2016, there was a problem that happened here. I told you about peace clause. What was in peace clause? Peace clause was that you can break the amber box regulation of 10%. But this negotiation in 2013 said you can break the negotiation valid till the year 2016 only. Later, India renegotiated this and removed the timeline. India said we will breach this 10% till a permanent solution is found. This made it more permanent कि जब तक permanent solution नहीं आएगा, we will break this, not to a particular day. Till that time period, India refused to sign TFA until and unless this language was changed. The moment this language change happened, India ratified it in January or I think February 2017 because this was a major issue. This is why Bali Peace Clause is called as a temporary solution. It is not a permanent solution. Answer here is these two are correct. 1 and 2. Permanent, that you allow breaking of 10%. यही हो सकता है ना. India will never agree to anything on this because who decided what goes in green and what goes in amber? So our public stock holding program you put in amber, but the income program you put in green. A lot of subsidies in US come through direct cash programs to farmers. There is no limit because it is part of green box. So India's subsidy which comes in the form of MSP is 1/10 of what US gives. But still limitation is on India, which is mostly for food security and is not for trade. US का the whole claim is कि आप MSP से production बढ़ाते हो और फिर वो export कराते हो. India says हम MSP से जो production कराते हैं वो PDS में बांटते हैं. So this should not be a part of this. Permanent solution is we want to take care of food security. This is why WTO is dysfunctional because nobody wants to give space. This is why RTAs are being signed. Every country is now working on regional trade and they're not working on multilateral trade. WTO is losing relevance because nobody wants to agree. India was? Because developing countries, including India and China, formed a grouping called the G33. Within few years, WTO has one major problem that WTO is a consensus-oriented body. WTO is not a membership or shareholder which they can decide. Now, if everybody has to agree, developing countries know they have more weight, they're not agreeing to anything. So they found out a bargain that you do this, we're going to give you this. Now, what is TFA? Trade facilitation is that your bureaucratic and infrastructures matters on the port will be easy. India says इसमें cost लगती है. So if you see the reading of TFA, they've said you can apply it according to your own capabilities, but at least sign it. वो ease of doing business है on the ports, TFA. So he said we'll sign it, but unless you provide a relief on this. Now, why did MSP be included in IMBR? ये कैसे हुआ? This happened because 1986 to 1994, the negotiations when happened, both India and China did not have any leverage. If you see the profile of both India and China, they were not at all having any economic weight in the geopolitical space. Both of these countries have picked up beyond 2000s. तो उनकी बात क्यों मानी जाएगी? और beyond 2000s फिर इन्होंने अपनी ग्रुपिंग बना ली, इन्होंने किसी बात पे नहीं माननी अब. This is what is the Doha development agenda which they want. US does not want that. So now it's a conflict. It's a conflict. The space is moved to regional trade agreements. These countries did not realize what they were agreeing to. This is why India from 1985 to 95 had this revolution. Oilseed revolution, yellow revolution. Rajiv Gandhi government came out with 4 programs to promote oilseed production in the country. And India got a yellow revolution. The complete revolution was destroyed by this WTO 95. In fact, cotton farmer suicides from 2000 to 2010. The whole Maharashtra region happened because of WTO, because cotton subsidies were being given and their cotton got traded. India could not sell anything outside. So WTO has created a number of problems for India. The whole oilseed revolution, cotton farmers, everything was problematic because of WTO. But हम जब rule making decide हो रहा था, हमारे पास we did not have a lot of voice. We did not trust. So the first was, I think, Bank of Japan and Switzerland. They said that you can repay. We are not taking the gold from you. So it is our gold, but kept with you. But UK said, no, you will have to have the physical shipment because we did not trust you whether you will be able to survive or not. If someone is giving you a loan, but not taking a guarantee from you, he has trust in you that you will recover. But if I'm saying that give me the guarantee, that means I have very less trust in you. I'm giving you a loan, but I don't have trust in you that you will improve. Domestic content requirement is sometimes seen in the news with reference to. This was a case with respect to the solar panels. India said whatever solar panels coming from US, there has to be some domestic content requirement, which was challenged in WTO. Domestic content requirement with respect to solar power production in a country. This was quite famous, the India and the US conflict on solar panel and domestic content requirement. What is domestic content requirement? Then whenever you start production, Tesla has the same problem right now. Whenever you are bringing in FDI, for example, Tesla starts producing cars in the country. Now, domestic content requirement says you will not import the 100% of the parts of the product. You will buy something from the domestic industry so that this industry also benefits from this. This is called as domestic content requirement. This domestic content requirement, that means domestic goods are getting a preference over imported goods. This is a violation of an agreement of WTO, that is TRIMS. TRIMS says any difference between the import of goods and domestic goods is a violation of a treatment of a principle of WTO, that is national treatment. What the principle of WTO says under national treatment, any good that is imported in the country will be treated at par with the domestic goods. That you will not discriminate with the import goods. This is called as national treatment. But when I have a domestic content requirement, am I discriminating against the imports? This is violated under TRIMS. National treatment principle हुआ वो TRIMS के अंदर में they have given. This is what is domestic content requirement. Is right now any treaty with respect to WTO in news? This is always in news, agreement on agriculture. Any other treaties in news with respect to WTO? If you're reading the newspaper in the last 3 to 6 months. Nothing with TRIPS. Is there any treaty on investment? They are creating. So certain issues they're talking about, then they're talking about data protection also, e-commerce also. The Information Technology Agreement signed in 96. Singapore, that was the first agreement. That agreement said no country can have a import barrier on technological products. This is what made the exchange of semiconductor easy. But now a lot of countries are violating it. Japan and a number of countries have a case against India that India is violating the information technology agreement. So if something like this comes in, then that agreement has to be prepared. ITA was signed in the first WTO ministerial in 96 in Singapore. The information technology agreement, which talks about trade in high technology products. उस पे barrier नहीं होना चाहिए. National Intellectual Property Right Policy was signed in 2016. With that, consider the following statement. It reiterates India's commitment to Doha Development Agenda and TRIPS Agreement. India is with Doha Development Agenda. The Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion is the nodal agency for regulating IPR in the country. This is true. IPR, all of the matters under Ministry of Commerce, uska ek department hai, Industrial Policy and Promotion. Both of the statements are correct. With reference to the Asia Pacific Ministerial Conference on Housing and Urban Development, this was a difficult question. So these type of questions you can't prepare for, because it's talking about an issue which is not a very repeatedly covered issue, that is housing and urban development, and also talking about a very specific area, that is Asia Pacific. So these type of questions you can leave, because this is something you can't solve and also you can't prepare for. So there are 10 to 15 questions in the entire paper which cannot be prepared for. So this is something which can be left comfortably. The first conference, the ministerial conference, was on the theme emerging urban forms. So you can see question is in 2017 or in 2006 ki theme puchi hai. So this itself shows that you should not solve this question. India hosts all the annual ministerial conferences in partnership. Now this looks to be wrong, but you can't say anything about the first statement. So this is why it won't help a lot that there are only two options left. Answer here is both are incorrect. The theme is wrong. Like, how can you know the theme in 2006? In 2017. Which of the following gives global gender gap index? Indices and reports जो recently covered in news, every year they are covered. Gender gap is covered by repeated. कल भी जो editorial है वो talking about this index only. It's released by World Economic Forum. India enacted the Geographical Indications of Goods Act 99 in order to comply with the obligations of WTO. So I told you WTO had 3 foundational agreements. The third agreement was on TRIPS. Now what is the idea behind TRIPS? What exactly is the TRIPS ensuring? The first agreement is to cover trade in goods. The second agreement is to cover trade in. The third is to cover intellectual property right matters. Why we have to cover intellectual property right matters? You understand what is intellectual property? What is it? Intellectual property is exclusive use of novelty. It can be granted in various forms. Patent, copyright, what else? Trademarks, industrial design, trade secret, geographical indication. All of them are promising exclusive use, something which is novel, right? Now what is the meaning of TRIPS here? Trade related intellectual property right matters. What is WTO dealing in? Multilateral trade, trade in good, trade in services. But what if a product comes from country A to country B and that product gets copied? What's the point of me investing so much when it's getting copied? Why it is getting copied? Because this country might not have stringent IP laws. So now innovation has become a very big thing after in the 90s. Now I won't trade because my products might get copied here because I don't get significant protection of intellectual property. So what TRIPS said, every country has to follow some norms of IP. This is where they have to bring their legal laws in compliance with TRIPS. Just like we said, 2016 National IPR policy is in line with TRIPS. Similarly, in order to provide for geographical indication, India passed a law in 99 for obligations under WTO TRIPS. Is this clear? If you understand what is the meaning of TRIPS, common protection, common set of guidelines which everybody has to agree to. GI Act was passed to comply to TRIPS. Because the case if goes to what body? Appellate body. Appellate body से पहले उनका जो the First is the conflict resolution, the dispute resolution body. If you don't have members there and if you don't have anything where you are using the guidelines or stopping, उस case में तो I can only impose trade sanctions that particular country. And otherwise I can't do anything. And also how will you prove that it is copied? Prima facie कैसे? मैं भी तो अपना पेटेंट फाइल कर सकता हूँ. फॉर एग्जाम्पल जियो व्हेन लॉन्च्ड 5G, इट सेड वी आर नॉट बाइंग एनी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फ्रॉम एनी कंपनी बिकॉज देयर वाज अ केस अगेंस्ट हुआवे. US said Huawei से कुछ मत लो because there is a problem, it is controlled by Chinese government. You can have back-end privacy from that, privacy issues from that company. So Jio said हमें Huawei या किसी से मतलब ही नहीं, हमने खुद ही बना लिया. How did they create everything on their own from scratch? They took a lot of IP license from Ericsson and Nokia. Prima facie कोई भी नहीं पकड़ सकता कॉपी. For example, Huawei became a very big giant. Cisco says most of our technology has been copied by Huawei. Cisco alleges that Huawei has done that. Huawei doesn't accept. वो बोलते हैं हमने खुद पेटेंट फाइल किया. It's very difficult to prove. सस्ते गुण में क्या IP है? Textile or even toy manufacturing, what's the intellectual property there? There is only cheap labor. There's no intelligent work you're doing. In any of the low-end manufacturing, the price of the product would be very high if you're using intellectual property. iPhone ये 2 लाख का कैसे हो गया है? Do you think the value of the product is 2 lakh? 80% of the iPhone cost is IP cost. 80%. This is why Apple is the most valuable company in the world without producing a single pin. Because of IP. In fact, forget Apple. Apple का फिर भी because of the bionic chip, what they design and what they do with that. Nvidia has become the third most valuable company. Nvidia तो बहुत ही specific GPUs बनाती है. They have beaten Google. So you can see the amount of sophisticated technology that is required, that Nvidia has become the third most valuable company, which is operating in a highly niche area. Beating a giant like Google is a very big thing which Nvidia has done. Product company के लिए करना बहुत बड़ी बात है. That's sophisticated technology. This is why the cost is high. Shirts और इसमें क्या है toys में? There's no technology. It's only cheap labor that is being used. With reference to Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, this was somewhat similar to World Bank, which now China wants to create. It has more than 80 members. India is the largest shareholder. Was this created by India? If it is not created by India, you cannot be the largest shareholder. You can eliminate 2 here. You have A and C. 1 is correct. It does not have members from outside Asia. This was a body launched in that particular year. That was important, and it had members from outside Asia. So here, only 1 is correct. Which of the following is not a sub-index of World Bank's ease of doing business? Now you can relate why sub-index was asked. Because the government targeted all the 10 sub-indices. Here there is maintenance of law and order is not a sub-index. All the 3 were sub-indices. The Global Competitiveness Report is released by, again repeatedly in news, which checks how much R&D development has happened. This is done by World Economic Forum. So these 2-3 bodies itself, most of the publications were asked. In context of India, which of the following factors are contributors to reducing the risk of currency crisis? When will a country have currency crisis? When will a country have currency? Imports, forget related to goods. Currency के matter में. When it does not have, and it has demand. Demand dollar की ज़्यादा है और supply dollar की कम है. This is a currency crisis. The foreign currency earnings of India's sector, it improves the supply or reduces the supply? If I earn foreign currency, it improves my supply. So will it help me counter the risk of currency crisis? Increase the government expenditure. If the government increases expenditure, I might increase the expenditure on imports. And if I increase the expenditure on imports, will I demand dollar or not demand dollar? So is it reducing my risk? Remittances from Indians abroad. Remittances will help improve the supply. So answer would be. So the moment you have a question like this, first figure out what exactly it is asking in terms of supply and demand of dollar. The moment you figure this out, the statements will be clear. Purchasing power parity exchange rates are calculated. How is the exchange rate calculated? How do we know the value of dollar to rupee? It's based on what is the demand of dollar and what is the supply of dollar, right? Another way of determining the exchange rate is, if I have one basket of goods and services, what will be the price of this basket in India and what will be the price of this basket in US? This can help me give what exactly is the exchange rate. This type of an exchange rate is called as purchasing power parity. Is it clear? The cost of the basket in US and in India is what gives me the exchange rate called the purchasing power parity exchange rate. Calculated by comparing the prices. This is correct. In terms of PPP, India is the 6th largest economy. Now, if I compare this price, say basket of good is a particular good, this good is more likely to be expensive in India or US. US में ज़्यादा महंगा होगा वो good as compared to India. So for example, I'm getting for 20 rupees and in US I'm getting it for $2. That means rupee to dollar exchange rate is 10 rupees to $1, right? But market exchange rate mein India always has a demand for dollar but less supply. That means here I will have a rate somewhere around 50, 60. Now if I have to calculate India's GDP in dollar terms, I have the rupee terms, I want to calculate in dollar terms, right? When I divide by this number or I divide by this number, कौन से area में बड़ा आएगा number? I have India, say 2 lakh crore rupees is the GDP. If I want to convert into dollar, I will have to divide by this or this. Which number will come out to be larger? That means purchasing power parity से India की GDP बहुत ज़्यादा आएगी, right? Is it the 6th largest then? It is the 3rd largest. Automatically because I'm dividing by a small number. So it will not be 5th. 5th largest तो वो market exchange rate पे ही आ गई है. If I'm dividing it by a smaller number, PPP, I will not have this. It is the 3rd largest economy. China is the largest economy in PPP dollars. US is 2nd, 3rd is India. If another global financial crisis happens, which of the following are the most likely to give some immunity? So if the crisis happens, what's the crisis? Crisis is again that I have less supply and more demand, right? Yahi crisis hai external. If I not depend on short-term borrowings, that means I will not have demand. If short-term borrowings have to return, that means this will give me some immunity because I'm not depending. Opening up of more foreign banks. If I open more foreign banks, that means I'll have more liability to return in dollars. This will not give me immunity. Maintaining full capital account convertibility. What is capital account? Those which have an impact on my asset liability. So one of the asset liability could be loans taken from outside. If I allow free taking of loans from outside, will it improve immunity or reduce immunity? Reduce immunity. So this is incorrect. Answer is. So always with respect to supply demand, you'll be able to solve. Gold tranche refers to whenever a country faces a crisis, how does it solve that crisis? External crisis hai, I don't have dollars. How do I solve that problem? I take help from, whenever the loan is taken from IMF, the first loan that comes in, that is without any condition. In fact, this one money which you have given to the IMF as part of its quota is what is used. So whenever IMF takes a quota, there is one part which you can take without any conditions, without any limits. This is called as the reserve tranche position or gold tranche. It is a credit system granted by IMF to its members. This is reserve tranche, which is your money kept with the IMF. So you can take whenever you have a problem without any condition. इसके बाद जो भी आप सेकंड, थर्ड और फोर्थ लोगे उसमें कंडीशंस होंगी. This money which you can take without conditions, it's your contribution, is reserve transposition. This is why this reserve transposition is also counted as country's foreign exchange reserve. क्योंकि आपका पैसा ये है IMF के पास रखा है. It's part of your reserve. Same. It's just another name is same. The value of India-Sri Lanka trade has consistently increased. So trade is an important thing which has been covered. The value of India-Sri Lanka trade has consistently increased. Now this is a slightly difficult question, a statement. Textile articles constitute an important item of trade between India and Bangladesh. Bangladesh is one of the largest leaders. This is an important item. In last 5 years, Nepal has been the largest trading partner of India in South Asia. So if you see in South Asia, is Nepal such a big country that India have trade? What are the two largest countries after India? Bangladesh and Pakistan. Geopolitical issues की वजह से पाकिस्तान के साथ trade नहीं है, so you'll have trade mostly with, or high value would be Bangladesh and not Nepal. 3 is incorrect, 2 is correct. So these two are eliminated, A and B becomes the option. This did not happen. Answer is 2 only. The first statement was slightly difficult. Reading the newspaper would help, but still difficult. With reference to FDI in India, which of the following is his major characteristic? What is FDI? Investment by non-residents. So if the non-residents is investing in your country, is it a liability? How? If the company, Suzuki is investing in Maruti, is it a liability on Maruti? How? Debt made as a loan. Debt becomes loan. If any country want to take money from outside, you take in the form of investment or you take in the form of loans. You either give away equity, you dilute your asset, or you take a liability. When you dilute an asset, that is an investment done by non-residents. It can be in debt also if bonds are being given, a small part, but mostly it is non-liability. Now read the statement. Investment through capital instrument essentially in a listed company. Does FDI mean only listed company? It can also be in unlisted. It's largely non-debt creating capital flow. Right? Non-debt means what? No liability because you are diluting an asset. It's an investment which involves debt servicing. No debt. It's an investment made by foreign institutional investors in government security. You can, beyond government security also you can invest. That means the answer is it clear? Largely non-debt. With reference to TRIMS, which of the following statement is correct? Quantitative restrictions on imports by foreign investors are prohibited. Now what exactly happens in TRIMS? If there is a particular investment that happens in India from outside and I have a domestic firm, if I have a policy which is existing on both, no discrimination here in policy, this is a foreign direct investment and this is a domestic firm. The policy exists equally on both, but one of the features on the policy is that if they are dealing in import and export of goods, and then I have certain discrimination with domestic goods. So that means the policy is on investment, but is equally applicable on domestic firm. But policy का एक implication है कि it creates a discrimination on import and export. If this happens, this is not allowed. So if you discriminate or violate GATT in goods through your investment policy, this matter will not be allowed. So for example, when I told you domestic content requirement, I had a content requirement on both, but did I create a difference between import and domestic goods? It will not be allowed. Similarly, if I say India will have imports, but the imports will have a limit, did I impose a similar limit on domestic goods? Again, this is a violation. Or if I say India will have export, it will only export if the company has certain domestic goods. आप import तभी कर पाओगे इस गुड के लिए जब आपने पहले domestic good लिया है. All of this creates a difference between them. This will not be allowed under TRIPS. Quantitative restrictions on imports by foreign investors are prohibited. So you can't have quantitative restrictions on imports. They apply to investment measures related to trade in both goods and services. I told you GATT is part of only, or TRIMS is part of GATT. That means only on trades in goods. It is not part of trade in services. They are not concerned with the regulation of foreign investment. Yes, investment pe koi, there is no implication. Implication should only be on trade in goods. So there's no implication on foreign investment. Answer would be 1 and 3 are correct. Answer is C. Is it clear? WTO की सारी agreements you have to prepare in detail because they have been asked in detail in the paper. Domestic content requirement is also a violation of TRIMS. This was India-US case. The term West Texas Intermediate, sometimes found in the news, refers to a grade of WTI. You've heard of Brent? What is Brent? Brent crude oil from? Brent crude comes from Russia? ये तो नाम में ही पता चल गया कहाँ से आता है. What are these? For example, Brent crude or WTI crude, what are these? These are price benchmarks because we cannot have a price from one firm. These are natural monopolies. तो किसी भी एक एरिया से जितना भी ऑयल आता है उसका एक ही प्राइस होता है. For example, Brent crude is the price benchmark for all the oil coming from North Sea, which is a benchmark used by most countries. Similarly, we have another for US market, that is West Texas Intermediate. Recently, India was buying crude from Russia. What was that benchmark? Covered in news significantly. It was the Urals grade. So these types of terms can come in the news. Texas Intermediate refers to a grade of crude oil. Which of the following can be included in FDI? First, non-resident external deposit. Are the deposits in a bank an investment? That is an asset of a non-resident in a bank in India, which is a liability. This is not giving me any equity. This is incorrect. I can eliminate 4. That means global depository receipts is clear. Foreign institutional investment with certain conditions. So an institutional investment but is allowed with conditions, and foreign currency convertible bonds. That means the government outside company is giving you money in the form of bonds. All the 3 can be form of foreign direct investment. This is why I said वो पूरा debt नहीं है, कुछ debt हो सकता है. This is why largely non-debt creating. This question could be done through elimination. Otherwise, what's the technical definition of FDI? Any investment done in an Indian company which is more than 10%. Controlling stake because we want to come for longer terms. Who gave this 10% rule? Who gave this 10% rule? From where did this 10% rule come in? So from where 10%? Why not 15? Who regulates all of this foreign exchange in the country? It's who? It's the RBI, Foreign Exchange Management Act 99, FEMA. Before it was Foreign Exchange Regulation Act 1973. All of these regulations come from Foreign Exchange Management Act of 99. The effect of devaluation of currency is necessarily, what happens in devaluation? Currency is losing value. $1 is 50 rupees and now $1 is 70. That means rupee has lost value, dollar has gained value, right? This is devaluation. It improves the competitiveness of the domestic exports. So if I am making a shirt of 350 rupees, what is the price of the shirt in the first case? Second case? In which case will I be able to sell more? Became competitive? It increases the foreign value of domestic currency. First case, what is the foreign value of domestic currency? Rupee 1 is equal to 1 by $50. In second case, it is, did the value increase or decrease? Decrease? This is incorrect. Improves trade balance. This means if I'm selling 100 shirts, what will the price I'm getting in the first case? $700. And what I'm earning in the second case? $500. And if I'm importing something of $100, how much do I have to pay in the second case? In this case, I will have to pay 7,000. Previously, I was paying. तो ये तो devaluation से trade balance खराब हो गया. Is it clear? Competitiveness बढ़ती है only when I'm able to improve the quantity of export and reduce the quantity of imports, then only trade balance improves. So competitiveness necessarily improves, but if I can't make the quantity changes, where I can't increase the quantity of export and reduce the quantity of imports, devaluation will hurt the economy. This is why not necessarily it improves the trade balance. Quantity bhi change hona chahiye. This is what happens. India's imports are mostly inelastic. What do we mean by inelastic? Price has changed, but quantity is not reflecting that. That means the good is, you have to buy, quantity don't change even if it is expensive. India's imports are inelastic. This is why devaluation can hurt India or depreciation can hurt, because import की quantity कम नहीं हो पा रही है. There will be more demand, but you don't know whether it has happened or not. What if the quality of the product is not good? Even after reducing the price, you're not buying it. For example, Canterville runs a sale 100% off. You heard of a brand Canterville? 70% off, 100% off. Still are people buying their product? They made it competitive by giving that discount. Question is asking this. This is why the assumption does not hold true. The answer would be one only. With reference to water credit, again, issue-based, difficult question. Microfinance tools to work in water and sanitation sector. Global initiative launched under the aegis of WHO. Enable poor people. It was not WHO. 1 and 3 statement were correct here. This is a difficult question to prepare. This is something you can't solve in the exam. One off question in 21. But again, this is a direction that issue-based institutions will come now, not the regular institutions. Rapid financing instrument and rapid credit facility are related to provisions of which of the following? Sri Lanka were facing problems with respect to the unavailability of dollar. They were asking both of these instruments from IMF. It was in the news, both of them were covered. It's a part of International Monetary Fund. With reference to the Indian economy, the nominal and effective exchange rate. What is nominal effective or real effective exchange rate? Any idea? Weighted average. So when we talk about nominal exchange rate, we are saying how much unit of rupee will be required to buy 1 unit of dollar. This is nominal exchange rate. When we adjust it to price levels, that becomes real exchange rate. How many units of Indian goods would be required to buy 1 unit of foreign good? That is real exchange rate. But if I want to compare rupees competitiveness with number of currencies, then I have a concept of nominal effective exchange rate. What the formula of how the RBI calculates this? What is the value of rupee with respect to value of SDR divided by value of foreign currency with respect to SDR, and I can calculate this in any number of currency. So it's not rupee to dollar, it is rupee to SDR. That means how many SDR can be bought from 1 rupee and how many SDR can be bought from $1. So it's the opposite how we calculate it here. Increase in near indicates appreciation. Now increase in this indicates depreciation. But now since the ratio has been reversed, it is dollar to rupee now. That means improvement will have appreciation. Calculation ka difference hai. It's not rupee to dollar. If you see, this becomes dollar to rupee. This is how it is calculated by RBI. An increase in real effective exchange rate indicates an improvement in trade competitiveness. Now if I'm saying the value increase means appreciation, does appreciation improve trade competitiveness? The depreciation improves trade competitiveness. So this is incorrect. Increasing trend in domestic inflation with relative to inflation in other countries is causing a divergence. The difference between the two is price levels. The difference between nominal and real is price level. So if the trend of inflation relative to those two countries are increasing, that means there will be more divergence. So this statement is correct. Answer is 1 and 3. Also, if this formula is not known, these two statements are related. अगर appreciation है तो competitiveness नहीं होगा improve. अगर appreciation नहीं है तो competitiveness improve होगा. So either 2 and 3 is correct or either 1 and 3 is correct. If you don't know how it is calculated, you can take a chance between B and C. Assuming this is correct, this will not be correct. Assuming this is incorrect, then this will be correct. Is it clear? If you want to just guess in the exam, not knowing how they are calculated. Again, issue based. UNOPS sustainable investment in infrastructure and innovation focus on for its investments. It is, apart from healthcare, it covers all three. Or apart from rapid transport, housing, healthcare and renewable energy. This is a fact-based difficult question to tackle. This is a good question. India accounts for 3.2% of global export of goods. What is the value of total export? Or is it India good in export of goods? 3.2% is a good enough value. For fact, this is mentioned every year in survey has a table which gives the complete profile of exports with respect to global trade. India is roughly around 1.5 to 1.7. Very low level of value of trade. This is quite high. 3 to 4% service trade ho sakta hai India ka, not this. Many local companies and some foreign companies operating in India have taken advantages of PLI. How can you solve this? Can foreign companies take PLI? How? How do you know this? If you read the newspaper in the last 6 months itself, you will find out that number of Japanese and Korean companies have complained that our PLI payments are still stuck with the government. In fact, there was a very big fiasco with the Hyundai investments also. So Indian government gave a PLI to a company called Hyundai with respect to battery manufacturing. Lithium cell battery ke liye PLI diya. The government realized, or the government gave this to Hyundai thinking it is Hyundai Automobiles. Next day, Hyundai Automobiles gave a clarification in the newspaper, we are not the Hyundai which asked for PLI. Government in the third day cancelled the PLI. So this came in the news all over, कि कैसे के नाम same थे, the government got confused which Hyundai has applied. And that given thinking it is South Korean Hyundai Automobiles. So from there also you could figure out that foreign companies are allowed PLI. A lot of news that PLI payments are stuck with the government. Foreign companies are allowed. One is incorrect, two is correct. बहुत number of companies are outside India. Now this is a question which I said issue-based questions they are covering in the last 2 years. USA and European Union have launched the Trade and Technology Council. US and EU claim that through this they are trying to bring technological progress and physical productivity under their control. Now if you read the statement, they've created a council and council से वो direct कह रहे हैं कि हम अपने अंडर में लाएंगे सब. Do you think this would be the language of a council that we want to control everything? So even if you don't know, 2 does not make a lot of sense. Answer 2 is incorrect, you can solve then. If it is incorrect, only 1 is correct, answer is C. But otherwise, how to prepare these questions, all of this are, you have to tackle the issue and then find the institutional mechanism on the issue. Trade and Technology Council. Similar, another. Stability and Growth Pact of European Union is a treaty that limits the levels of deficit of countries of EU, makes the countries to share infrastructure facility, enables the country to share the technologies. Sorry. The issue was the too much debt being taken. Earlier mechanism was European Stability Mechanism. This Stability Mechanism says control the budgetary deficit. It doesn't deal with infrastructure or technology sharing. Debt was the important issue. Debt got controlled by this. This year, India does not import apples from US. True or false? Yahi Rajendra Nagar mein you'll find 80% of the market selling US apples. Such is the significance. In India, law prohibits the import of GM food without the approval of the competent authority. So you cannot have genetically modified without any approval because it has an impact on both human health and animal and plant health. 1 is incorrect, 2 is correct. Very easy. US बहुत import है apple का. Recently, Venezuela has achieved a rapid recovery from its economic crisis and succeeded in preventing its people from fleeing or immigrating to other countries. So if you're covering the news, you know it has not contained its economic crisis. 1 is incorrect. Venezuela has the world's largest oil reserves. This is true. This is why this is getting a lot of news because of the oil reserves. Maduro government. financial markets. Rest of them we'll have another session. In case you have a doubt from any of these questions which we have discussed or any other questions from economics, you can note down the email address, you can write here. I think half of the questions have been done. Indian economy is still left. Thank you.